ibigyan ko hanggat saan kaya. Pero bilang chairman ng appropriations, meron tayong rules na ginawa, na 3-minute rules. Ngayon, dito sa Congress, we live by rules, not by laws. Kumbaga, kung ang rules natin, 3 minutes, galangin natin yung 3 minutes. Diba? Naiintindihan ko po yung mga kasamahan ko sa kanilang mga concerns. Pero sana po, maintindihan niyo po ako na kung hindi po ako magsaset ng 3-minute rules, pagka sa 3 minuto lang po, 300 na magtanong, 15 hours na po yun. Ngayon po, yung sasagot po, times 3, 45 hours, 60 hours po yun. Ang atin po, kailangan natin ipasa tong budget natin on time para sa mga constituent natin at para sa mga Pilipino. Ngayon po, dun sa mga nagrereklamo sa akin, na kung minsan may mga light moment, may mga tinatawag akong magaganda, hindi po pambabastos yun, kung hindi para matanggal ang pagod, puyat at hirap namin dito sa Nograles Hall at sa mga nasa Kongreso. Wala pong intensyon na kung ano man pong offensive, but to lighten up the moment. Ngayon po, uulitin ko, yung 3 minutes rules, mag-stick po tayo doon. Kung hindi po titigil or hindi pa po tapos, pwede nyong isulat sa yellow pad paper yung inyong mga tanong pa at ipapadala ko po sa Dpwh upang maisagot nila at may padala ko po sa yung sagot nila. Sana po maintindihan nyo po na kada committee po ay may kanya-kanya pong rules. Ngayon po, kung kayo lalagpas ng 3 minutes, ipapapatay ko po yung mic. At ngayon po, kung hindi po kayo masaya dun sa ginagawa ko, pwede nyo po ako i-unseat from being appropriations chair anytime. Salamat po. Briefing suspended.
Chairman, parang hindi ka pagalit yan, ha? Ha? Alis na ako.
Meeting resumed. I would like to remind everyone that we will follow strictly the 3-minute rule, and the chair will stop anyone who exceeded the time allocation. In the last meeting, tapos na yung minority. So next now to interpellate is Congressman Khalid Dimapuro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I be recognized? Can you hear me?
Yes, you are recognized. Please
Thank
proceed.
you. Thank you, Chairman. I would like to ask Secretary Mark and the Dpwh family on something that they pride themselves on because we see it every budget briefing of the Dpwh, and that's the Pangal Bay Bridge. Mr. Chair, it's already 2 years since our good secretary and even our president visited the land of beauty and bounty, the province of Lanao del Norte, to ground break the Pangal Bay Bridge. But 2 years after, and it's almost 2 years this coming November, wala pang bridge. And we want to know what exactly is the status of Pangal Bay Bridge. Because we don't want this to be an empty promise, an unfinished project of the Duterte administration. That's my first question, Mr. Chair.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Secretary.
Mr. Chair. I'd like to recognize Yusek Emil Sadain. He's our Yusek in charge of the foreign funded project. So he's directly in charge of the Pangal Bay Bridge. He can give the committee an update on the status of the Pangal Bay Bridge. Thank you.
You are recognized, Yusek Undersecretary Emil Sadain.
Mr. Chair, I apologize. Yusek Emil is still, I think, on the other room. So we probably could wait for Yusek Emil Sadain to come in.
Session suspended.
Chairman, Suspended tayo?
Suspended for a while, Kong. Sa
Okay,
Dain is not
sabihin
in
ko
the
na
room.
lang to para marinig ni Secretary Mark. Ang problema ko rito, ilang beses tinawag ko si Yusek Sadayan sa Committee on Mindanao Affairs, hindi siya pumupunta. So, I wouldn't have to wait until budget briefing to ask these questions. This was ever since June. Dapat hindi ganito. Yeah, I have a lot of pent-up anger and I'm trying to just control myself. So, yan lang. I just want to let Secretary Mark know we're good friends and I'm just disappointed with Secretary Sadayan. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Well, this is a session. But anyway,
Session.
I will discuss with Emil. Of course, I don't want. I apologize if there were any misunderstandings with the communication, but definitely, rest assured, you can call me anytime as well in case there are any issues. So please, I apologize if there was some in the past, but I will discuss that with you, Camille. At the same time, of course, my lines of communication are open anytime, anytime.
Thank you, Secretary Mark. If you can just please inform your secretary who I'm texting that you give the go signal to give me your personal number. So if I have any problems, we can resolve it, and I don't have to wait, for every budget briefing just to have my answers from the DPWH.
Of course.
We're with you. We want the Pangal Bay Bridge to be a successful project of the Duterte administration.
Yes, actually, I have some insight, but anyway, I'll wait till Yusek Camille because he knows I'd like to give you a full detailed update with regards to the detailed engineering design and the challenges that we face with this because of the COVID. We had a hard time bringing in some of the Korean experts to do the deep. But anyway, I won't go into all of it yet since para isang beses. So we'll give you one briefing. Maybe he'll come.
Session is now resumed. Secretary, Yusek Emil is not in the room right now. I think he cannot answer because he's not around. He's not in the Zoom also. So can you provide the answer to the question of Congressman Khaled de Mapuro?
Mr. Chair, so our good secretary and the DPWH family will not have a hard time. I'm willing to just have the DPWH submit to the committee secretariat the timetable of the Pangal Bay Bridge, and if there's any slippage, report to us also the slippage so we can monitor it in the ground level.
Yes, Kong. I mean, basically, so some of those things that I mentioned were some of the challenges recently, of course. But it's already in terms of the budgeting, the procurement is already finished. Unfortunately, because of this recent crisis, it was very challenging. We needed to bring in some of the Korean experts because of the very large, being a very large project. We had to bring in a lot of experts, but we weren't able to. But right now we're working on that. But I'll give you an update, Kong. We'll go into even more details. Again, I apologize if the communication lines weren't. I'm aware of this now, so I'll give you a call, Kong. I'll personally help you with this.
Honorable Secretary, can you just submit the timelines that was requested by Kong Khaled?
Yes. We will apply. We will submit.
Thank you. Next question.
Thank you, Chair. And then my second question is in regards to the BARM projects of the DPWH. Secretary Mark knows this. I'm one of the authors of the Bangsamoro Organic Law, and I want the Bangsamoro Organic Law to be respected. I want to know if DPWH has a budget in 2021 to implement projects in the BARM through regions 9, 10, and 12.
Yes, we are under the BARM. The national roads are under the DPWH. But what we did is so that it doesn't mix with the regional, we have another special project management office that just recently was approved by the Office of the President. So that in terms of the region, it should not be affected by these additional ARM projects. It will have its own implementing unit that specifically will specifically implement these BARM projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd just like to request and have DPWH answer if the national roads in the BARM have been included in the National Road Inventory as required by the Bangsamoro Organic Law in Section 39. And by the way, Mr. Chair and Secretary Mark, this is my only concern, compliance with the Bangsamoro Organic Law.
Yes, I'd like to recognize Yusek Cabral to give an update on the,
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Undersecretary Cabral, you are now recognized.
Thank you. Yes, Mr. Chair, the inventory is currently being conducted right now in the survey to be included in our national database for roads and bridges in Dpwh.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my last question is just a request for data. I think with what happened in last budget briefing, there might be an appeal for transparency among the members of the House of Representatives. So one of our big problems are the FLR projects in the 2020 budget, and we want to make sure that there's no favoritism as far as the DBM is concerned in releasing SAROs, as far as the DPWH is concerned in implementing or prioritizing FLRs. I would like to request the good secretary and the DPWH family to submit to the committee secretariat so it's available for all members of the HOR on what is the status of FLR projects versus SARO's release. So we want to know the data nationwide per district engineering office of FLRs, how much is the project versus the SARO amount released by DBM. So we know how that we can get confirmation or reconfirmation that there's no monkey business and we're all being treated fairly. That's my last and final manifestation, Mr. Chair. Thank you so much for allowing me to ask questions in this DPWH budget briefing. I've also sent my other requests and concerns in form of a letter to the DPWH, and I hope that they will facilitate and answer them for me. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any comments, Honorable Secretary?
yes, we will submit the request of the Congressman Dimaporo, and of course we are always we are one in your desire to make sure that things are the FLR is fairly released. In fact, for us, the sooner the better for us. We're really pushing to have these funds released as soon as possible. All of them.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Secretary Mark.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to the next interpellator from the minority. Like to call on Congressman Bayani Fernando.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. I have here a little manifestation and probably one or two questions after.
Please proceed. Please proceed.
Mr. Speaker, distinguished colleagues in government, and the good Secretary Mark Villar, I will dispense with the lengthy interpellation that will directly to my important and pressing concern. This is about the river, Marikina River, and the flooding in my district. Rivers actually starts from the higher grounds, the mountains, and flows down the lower grounds of the valleys and plains. Such is the Marikina River that starts from the Montalban Mountains and flows down to Rodriguez, San Mateo, Marikina, and empties into the sea by way of the Pasig River, which Pasig River is an estuary of the Manila Bay. And this estuary extends to Marikina up to the old bridge. It may be difficult to imagine that on high tide, the flow of the river is to my district, and it's the lowest part of the valley, and since time immemorial, been flooded practically every year. Anyway, 50 years ago, work started to solve this perennial flooding of the valley. A floodway was built primarily to save from flooding the city of Manila, which lies downstream of the Pasig River. Then after, work on the lower Marikina River started 50 years ago on the Pasig City portion, and in 2018, reached up to the boundary of Pasig and Marikina. Subsequently, work started upstream of the Marikina River, leaving behind that portion of the river downstream, which is my district, which suffers the most flooding, as it is the lowest ground of the Marikina Valley. Common sense would tell us that work on any waterway must start from downstream going upstream. And the brunt of any flooding is always on the downstream where the most water comes and the lowest elevation is the most damage. This may be among the major wrong technical decisions that got us to nowhere, so much that it's appalling to note that after 50 years of work and spending 50 billion, not one community part of this program was saved from flooding to this day. The good secretary on my representation committed an initial 500 million in 2020, of which 200 million was allocated. Unfortunately, for whatever unknown reason, the balance of 300 million was not released. I don't know where it's now. No? And it would need 2 billion more to complete the left out portion, which, if done right, would remarkably be on record to have been accomplished after 50 years. And the right thing to do is to allocate this amount to come from the proposed foreign assisted loan from JICA, amounting to 11 billion as originally reflected in the NEP, but subsequently reduced to 5.9 billion in the annex. And or any fund for Upper Marikina River be aligned to this part of the project to completion. Meron ng work as far as San Mateo, Tinalakay, bukan ng Montalban eh. But itong pinakamalalim na portion na iniwan, ano? Kaya nga ito, Mr. Secretary, I would not put the blame on the good secretary on this institutional failure, which may be reflective of many such failures in our system. I believe that in his 4 years in the post would have given him better knowledge to correct these mistakes of the past, and I believe he can
you
do
wind
it right
up,
and better more than
sorry.
anyone else to protect the interests of our government and the people. So Mr. Secretary, pwede po bang pakitulungan nyo kami? After 50 years yan na lang po naging rason ko kaya mag-congressman eh. Pero wala ko nakikitang that if we, as thing is going now, probably it will take another 20 years. After 50 years, then another more 20 years. Matanda ka na rin nun. That time, Secretary, patay na ako nun. Maraming salamat, Mr. Secretary. Pero,
Mr. Secretary, can you answer, please?
My question is, saan ba napunta yung 300 million, Mr. Secretary? Pakitignan lang. Baka naman merong nangyari, no? At isa ay baka po pwede na unahin naman ninyo itong downstream.
Sir, your 3 minutes is up.
The upstream. Yeah. May I hear? May we hear a little endearing word for my constituency, Mr. Secretary? Something that would help us.
Thank you, thank you. Honorable Secretary, can you answer?
Pinarating nyo sa amin ang inyong concern sa Marikina River. Isa po yung sa mga priority projects ng Pasig Marikina. I'm sure you're aware, of course, yung JICA flagship project. So that is among our flagship projects for this administration. At maganda po yung inyong suggestion dahil dapat talaga minsan yung downriver dapat mauna. So I will discuss it with them and then we will coordinate. I will instruct our flood management group to coordinate with you, Mr. Chair, so that we can address this Marikina because this is a perennial issue in Metro Manila. Yung flooding po, lalo na po sa Marikina. Kaya I thank you again for your very insightful observations, and I will immediately direct our flood management office to address these concerns, and I will personally look into this. Salamat po.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. We'll proceed to the next interpellator from the majority. Deputy Speaker Ferdinand Hernandez.
Okay lang.
Deputy Speaker Ferdinand Hernandez, are you in the Zoom right now? Deputy Speaker Hernandez. If not, then we'll proceed to the next interpellator from the majority. Congresswoman Geraldine Roman. Honorable Geraldine Roman, if you are in the Zoom right now. If not, then we'll proceed to the next from the majority. Congressman Edgar Mary Sarmiento.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Secretary. Mr. Chair, this is it's of a national policy concern, Mr. Chair. And I would like to address the Secretary of the Department of Public Works and Highways, pertinent right now to job generation, utilizing infrastructure as one of those. Mr. Chair, I have a House Bill, this is 7591. And looking at the opportunity for the budget of 2021, the possibility of coming up with a special provision that 10% of the budget of the Department of Public Works and Highways be utilized as an item of work called COVID item 19 to generate jobs for the returning OFWs and, of course, LSI who are right now returning to the provinces. Is this possible, Mr. Chair? May I ask the Secretary?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we've already issued a order that's encouraging, of course, the use of jobs, the use of local workers, and encouraging the job generation in all DPWH projects. So it's something that we share with you. We really want to use this build, especially now given the COVID-19, to generate more jobs. So we will support you in that, in your cause also. We have been and we will continue to support you in that.
Mr. Chair, the whole intention, Mr. Chair, is really to help the Department of Public Works and Highways so that it will be put into law, the special provision allowing you to utilize your fund of 10% so that the Commission on Audit will no longer question any variation order. Now, this will not duplicate as well, Mr. Chair, any items of work that is already bidded, rather allowing the Department of Public Works and Highways to come up with menu that will have a net effect to the community, Mr. Chair. That's why if ever, Mr. Chair, I will put this in a formal motion, that a special provision should be provided in the law to the general appropriation for the Department of Public Works and Highways 2021 budget, that they have to come up with an item, COVID-19, that will be manually related as not at the cost or expense of the contractor, rather to help generate employment that has a net effect in the community. So move, Mr. Speaker, Mr. Chairman.
Any second?
Thank you so much. On the last note, Mr. Chair, as a national policy of the Department of Public Works and Highways, on the questions right now brought about by the 4 later release project, are we pursuing early procurement still to save on time on the month of August? Clearly, the 4-month cycle on procurement to address as well capacity of the Department of Public Works and Highways. Are you still going to pursue that, or we do have to wait for the approval of the budget, Mr. Chair?
As you know, Mr. Chair, we are allowed to conduct pre-procurement short of award. That's something that we've always been doing. We continue to do in order to expedite the implementation of these projects. At the same time, we're also we're pushing very hard as well to have all the FLR. At this point, I think we're somewhere in the ballpark of about 50 billion out of 40, maybe around almost 50 billion out of the 135 has been released. And I think we'll be able to, I think there will be large releases this month. So we're quite confident that we'll be able to increase our disbursements and overall performance of the department in time for the last quarter of the year.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, on the last note, I would like to congratulate the Department of Public Works and Highways for a job well done. The productivity level has been increasing, and the dedicated workers, of course, of the family of the Department of Works and Highways deserve something, Mr. Chair, not to discredit them, rather to give them the inspiration to do something better and more for the country. And again, congratulations, DPWH. And I would like again to remind everyone that the hardworking secretary was even infected with COVID-19, no? Just to spend his time to come up with the isolation center we need in this country, and hoping the secretary is now doing well. Again, my sincerest congratulations to the Department of Public Works and Highways family. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, everyone.
Thank you, Congressman Sarmiento.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Before we proceed with the next interpellator, I would like to recognize the presence of Deputy Speaker Johnny Pimentel, Deputy Speaker Rani Abu, Deputy Speaker Dan Fernandez, Vice Chair Ted Harisco, and Undersecretary Emil Sadain of the Department of Public Works and Highways. The next interpellator is from the minority, and I would like to call Congressman Karaps Paduano. Okay. Okay. So next is Congressman Franz Castro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, proceed.
Yeah. Thank you. So on my first question, Mr. Chair, on the total convergence, yung mga projects po under convergence. So in the net, the total amount is 50,219,822, and in the supplemental, so it increased to 61,177,538,000. So yun po yung first question. And bakit po tumaas?
Mr. Secretary.
Well, I just really just to familiarize the committee and Mr. Chair with this the convergence. We've expanded our convergence programs to include recently ROLIT, TICAS, to especially with the DOTR. So we've actually increased the number of convergence programs, hence the increase. And of course, as we complete more national roads, the shift becomes we look for more projects that, even though they're local, they serve a national purpose. So as we expand the definition and the scope of our convergence, we can expect that the number or the amount in these convergence programs will also increase. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so what would be the implication of this to the total budget of the Dpwh? So it would increase also. So meron kayong tinanggal o meron ba kayong pinalit?
Kasama din naman po sa ceiling yung mga convergence programs. Wala naman tinanggal. It's a question of priority. Basically, our priorities include the first priorities, which is the 001. We call it 001. That is the national roads and the completion of existing national projects. And then the 002 is flood control. 003 is convergence. So it's really a matter of prioritizing. Hindi naman nawawala po sa, we just try to make a healthy balance of projects every year.
Nag-increase siya eh. Nag-increase kasi siya, Mr. Chair. Nag-increase to 11 billion. At para makita po natin, Mr. Chair, doon sa wala sa NEP, na nandito sa supplemental, like for example, yung mga railway stations, yung improvement of capacity provincial bridges along provincial roads. So ano po yung pagkakaiba nito, no, doon sa yung mga roads na po natin na nakalagay doon sa NEP. Tapos yung Pasig River Ferry Convergence Program na wala sa NEP pero may dagdag na budget sa supplemental, at saka po itong itong special road fund, yung motor vehicles users, wala po sa NEP pero nandoon po sa supplemental under the total convergence. At napansin ko rin po, Mr. Chair, yung President's Infrastructure flagship program na lumilitaw-litaw naman siya doon sa iba't ibang mga project, like for example, construction of flyovers, interchange, underpass, long span bridges, 889 million, wala po ito sa NEP. Tapos yung bridge program po, yung replacement ng permanent weak bridges, 637 million, wala rin sa NEP. Construction of missing links, net roads, 6.422 billion, wala din po ito sa NEP, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary.
Mr. Chair, I think everything, what we submitted was the complete NEP. I mean, there's nothing, we didn't submit anything else. So, when you look at the NEP, kompleto na po, lahat po, kompleto. Everything that you've mentioned will be in the NEP. If it's not in the NEP, then it's not part of obviously it's not part of our budget if it's not in our submitted expenditure program.
So, bakit ganun? Bakit po tumaas? Kung talagang yun po ay nasa NEP, kasi 50 million lang to, 50 billion eh, naging 61 billion dito sa supplemental nyo. Yung late na sinubmit ninyo po. So, pwedeng ipaliwanag kasi baka magkaiba po tayo ng tiningnan. Kasi tiningnan ko po talaga yung yung sa supplemental nyo as compared to the NEP, tumaas po talaga. At may mga item na binanggit ko, Mr. Chair, na wala sa NEP talaga. Kaya siguro siya tumaas.
maybe we should clarify that. I think, Mr. Chair, we can provide you a copy of the NEP. That is that is already the itemized proposal of the DPWH.
This will be your last question, Franz.
Meron pa po, Mr. Chair, last na lang po. Pero gusto ko pong maliwanagan, Mr. Chair, yung pagbabago dun sa amount. Kasi kung magkaiba po kami ng tinitignan o nakikita ni Mr. Chair ng ating secretary, so paano po nangyari yon? Ano po yung isasubmit ninyo ulit sa amin?
Mr. Chair, we can submit the NEP. I think there might be some confusion because of the we received our sealing on the 16th. And of course, the printing was shortly thereafter. So we were coordinating the DBM. They allowed us to give the details of our NEP in an annex that we have already submitted to Congress. So I think that anyone, if there are any questions or any clarifications, they can look at that submitted NEP that we gave. What we initially submitted was just a general budget, but it was not the broken down. The broken down followed shortly in an annex that we submitted to the committee. So, Mr. Chair, the committee it's readily available to everyone for your perusal. And the NEP, whatever it is, there's no other supplemental. It's just the NEP. That's what we submitted, and that's what the committee has.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Okay, Mr. Chair, hindi po ako satisfied So talagang magkaiba po talaga yung amount na sinubmit sa NEP at saka doon sa supplemental. So yun po yung gusto ko lang malaman doon kung meron pa pong isasubmit siguro ang Department of Public Works and Highway. So anuhin na lang po natin yun, kuhanin na lang po natin.
Thank you.
So yung last na lang, Mr. Chair, yung tungkol doon sa MOOE. So meron po tayo dito mga consulting services amounting to 640.813
Castro, that will be your last.
million. Mr. Chair, last question na po ito. So wala po itong breakdown. Ano tong mga consultation services na ito, saan-saan na mga projects na kasi malaki din to, Mr. Chair, 640.813 million. Kung merong specifics or merong details ang DPWH, Mr. Chair, ay pakisubmit na lang po kung meron.
Mr. Secretary.
Yes, we can submit to the committee a breakdown of those consultancies that the
projects.
Being requested.
Okay, 640.813 billion. Number 7 up to number.
Thank you, Congrats.
Number 15 po dun sa other sa MOOE. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We'll now proceed to the next interpellator. From the majority, I think Congresswoman Geraldine Roman is now in the Zoom. Can I call now Congresswoman Geraldine Roman, please?
Magandang hapon po, Mr. Chair. Magandang hapon din po sa ating mahal na Secretary Mark Villar at sa lahat po ng resource people at pamilya po ng DPWH. Meron po akong ilang katanungan, but it does not necessarily have to do with our budget or NEP for 2021, but rather something that concerns the policy of the DPWH with regard to the design and the scope of your road overlaying projects. I just like to communicate to you yung nagiging problema po ng maraming komunidad sa ating bansa. When you say overlaying ng ating mga roads, ang ginagawa po at nakagawian na po ng DPWH is patong na lang po ng patong. And we end up with a situation wherein ang mga communities on both sides of the road ay lumulubog po in relation to the elevated road. So my question is, Mr. Secretary, meron po tayong clear-cut policy? Meron bang maximum elevation ang naabot ng ating mga daan na pinapatayo at ino-overlay? Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Well, I guess in general, and I'll ask one of our USECs to expand on this, but in general, the reason, of course, why we use those high roads is so that in times of calamity, we want to make sure the most important thing is always to have the transportation network available. So, in every design of every road, we always have to take that into account. But your concern is valid because yes, sometimes it's higher than others. With regards to the specific road details, I can ask from our technical group, if I can ask ASEC Molano or USEC Sadain to give you a more detailed answer on the height, the required height of these national roads.
Kung Yusek Mulano is here, is he around?
Sir, good afternoon, Your Honors. Good afternoon, sirs. With regards to the design of our national roads, of course, for flooded areas, we have to get the highest flood level. We should be higher than the highest flood level for the roads and even for the bridges. For the bridges, we have to have pre-board in the bridges of 1.5 meters. So for the roads, that's why we are elevating some of our roads to allow the free transport of vehicles during flood season. So ang ano po natin dyan, kinukuha po natin yung highest flood level na doon sa area, then dinidesign po natin na higher than the highest flood level.
Mr. Chair, Mr.
Opo.
Chair, may I be recognized?
Let's proceed kung
Yes, po.
Roman, please.
I will initially accept that explanation, but I really want to appeal to our dear Secretary and of course to Dpwh to review your exact policies. I believe that we cannot apply a uniform policy throughout our country, but rather we should custom design and adjust our policies to suit the needs of the community where these infrastructure projects are being built. Marami pong kaso, nagpapatayo, tumataas, nagbabaha po on both sides. So, kailangan po siguro mag-incorporate tayo ng drainage at mga canals and let it be a standard feature na po ng ating mga daan. What cannot be admitted is that what we seek to propose as a solution to better the lives of our people will become the source of the problem. That is my point. And for this matter, maaari sana sa NEP 2021, yung inyong mga projects ay incorporate nyo na po ang mga canals and you study please yung elevation. Mr. Chair.
Ma'am, if I may, meron pong policy sa department, may guidelines na po si Secretary, na in designing our roads, we should already incorporate the required drainage po para yung elevation din po ng drainage nandun din po to allow the free flow of water po palabas po do sa mga outfall po natin. So kasama na po, dapat po yon kasama na yung drainage doon na po sa design ng mga highways po natin. So makakaasa po kayo in our mga design po ngayon, incorporated na po pati yung mga drainage po.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Last point na lang po, nasasayan po ako dun sa balita ngayon na nanawagan ako sa mga congressmen, subaybayan din po natin ang mga proyekto para makita kung ini-implementa na yan, bagong policy na yan. Last point is, dun sa ating mga flood control projects, have you considered convergence projects with NIA? Kasi po ang ating mga flood control, minsan naiipon po dyan ng tubig at sayang po yung tubig na dumadaloy na lang po sa dagat. Baka naman we can design dams, we can design means by which magagamit, mapapakinabangan po ng ating mga magsasaka ang mga tubig na nai-impact sa ating mga flood control projects po. Mr. Chair.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Of course, you know, the irrigation is really the expertise of the NIA. But nevertheless, I agree that if there's areas where if we do flood control, somehow we can work, and we've done it in the past, we can work with the NIA to create a structure that would also benefit possibly the irrigation. I mean, it's not, even though it's not our main line, and of course it's within the purview of the NIA. Definitely on our part, we're more than open to working with them to make sure our structure somehow would be of benefit also to our farmers. That's something we're very open to, and we thank you for recognizing that, and we will help you in that advocacy.
Maraming salamat po, Mr. Chair, at congratulations din po sa DPWH under the effective management and supervision of our dear Secretary Mark Villar. Thank you very much. Magandang hapon.
Before we proceed, I would like to remind everyone to direct your question or your answers to the chair. Next, to interpolate will be coming from the minority, and this time we will go back to Congressman Karaps Paduano. I think he's in the Zoom right now. Karaps Paduano. Kong Paduano. Hindi ka namin marinig, so we'll proceed to the next interpellator from the minority. Congresswoman Euphemia Kulyamat.
Okay, magandang hapon, Mr. Chair.
Proceed, yes.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Ang aking tanong po dito sa Dpwh ay hinggil doon sa mga project, no, ng Dpwh. Halimbawa dito sa Kaliwa Dam, maraming katutubo at grupo ng mga tagapagtanggol ng kalikasan ang nagpahayag ng pagtutol sa Kaliwa Dam, no? Ang tanong ko po dito ay magpapatuloy ba ang proyektong ito kahit sa mayroong tumututol?
What I know is, well, una po under ng MWAS po yung Kaliwa. Kung meron pong representative ang MWAS dito, baka pwede natin si General baka pwede niyang sagutin yung.
Is anybody from MWAS you recognize?
If not, I can try my best to give what.
Please proceed, Secretary.
Sige po, since there's no representative, but I know definitely this has been it is a priority because of the recent problems that we've had regarding water supply. There is definitely a need to have redundancy in Metro Manila, and Kaliwa Dam is one of those ways that we can achieve that redundancy. This is from my knowledge of the project. And what I know is tuloy naman po yung project. As regards to the specific details, I can ask the MWSS to give you a briefing on the Kaliwa Dam project. But it has gone through, if I'm not mistaken, it has already gone through the NED. It has gone through stages of approval already from other agencies. So I think it's an advanced stage of planning at this point, perhaps opening stages of implementation. But I can ask the MWAS to give you a more detailed update.
Mr. Chair, requirements sa pagpapatuloy ng proyekto, ang pahintulot mula sa mga epektibong katutubo. Tama po ba, Mr. Chair?
Ano po, Mr. Chair? Ano pong, sorry, ano pong tanong?
Ang requirement para sa pagpapatuloy ng mga proyekto, ang pahintulot mula sa epektadong katutubo. Tama po ba?
Marami pong approval. Siyempre yung NCIP, para matuloy po yung project, kailangan talaga ng consultation sa ating mga, lahat po ng stakeholders ng project, kailangan po i-consult. So, kasama po yan sa requirements ng NEDA.
Congresswoman Kulyaman.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
Maraming mga katutubo, no, ang tumututol sa proyekto dahil sa mapanirang epekto nito. Mayroon na bang pahintulot mula sa lahat ng mga katutubong dumagat sa naepektado, Mr. Chair?
Siguro, Mr. Chair, siyempre kami naman po, hindi po directly under ng agency, more really under the MWAS yung itong project. So, but as far as I know, ang alam ko po, nakikipag-consult sila, nagawa na po nila lahat ng consultation at siyempre kasama na po yung tulong sa komunidad sa mga apektado ng project. Pasensya na po at sa mga detalye, kailangan po i-consult ko po muna yung MWAS, and siguro kung meron pa kayong mga tanong, isasabit ko na lang po sa committee.
Pwede bang humingi ng detalye sa COA report ng proyektong ito?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will submit a more comprehensive report. I will request the MWAS to submit a more comprehensive report to the committee.
Mr. Chair, maiksing manifestation. Marami pa rin mga katutubong dumagat ang nagpapahayag ng pagtutol sa proyekto ng Kaliwa Dam. Malinaw na ang pagkasira ng kalikasan at kabuhayan at ang magpapalayas ng mga katutubo na ang idudulot nito. Malinaw rin na walang pahintulot mula sa katutubo na rekisito bago magsimula ang proyekto. Hindi dapat magpapatuloy ang proyektong ito, Mr. Chair. Maraming salamat at magandang hapon.
Thank you. We will now proceed to the majority. The next interpellator from the majority is Congressman Vicente Veloso.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My question is addressed to both the Honorable Secretary, the Good Secretary, and His Undersecretary, Roberto Bernardo. Yesterday, I was given a copy by your district engineer of the 3rd District of Leyte involving 5 ongoing projects that were not funded in 2021 NEP. May I know if the Secretary received a copy of this letter?
I have yet to receive a copy of the letter, Mr. Chair, but I am willing to meet personally with the good congressman should there be to discuss the specifics. Kami naman po, syempre nakikinig kami sa lahat ng suggestions ng ating mga kongresista na napakahalaga at napakaganda po ng mga insights nila. So I just like to, Mr. Chair, just like to reiterate that I can meet with the congressman if he has specific concerns with his district.
Problem, Mr. Chair, is I'm in Leyte. I'm a senior citizen, ang hirap talaga magpunta ng Manila. But did you, Sec. Bernardo, receive a copy of this letter?
Mr. Chair, we only received your letter yesterday po, and we asked the regional director to validate at wala pong problema naman, Mr. Chair. Padadala po namin kay Secretary yun for possible considerations po.
Maraming salamat. My last question involves a problem that I understand is not really a problem that emanated from the Dpwh. In our discussions with congressmen, pinag-uusapan dito yung FLR. Tanong ko lang po, dito sa proposed 2021 budget natin, ito ba nakasama ang FLR, meaning for later release, ng projects that were already budgeted under the 2020 General Appropriations Act sa Supreme Law? Ulitin ko po, hindi kasalanan ito ng Dpwh. Kailangan lang po natin maliwanagan kung ano ba talaga ang nangyayari dito.
Mr. Secretary?
Yes, Mr. Chair, you're asking kung kasama po yung FLR sa 2021 budget? Is that the question?
For later release ng 2020 budget, isinama dito sa 2021 budget. Yun lang po.
For later release, the portion of the projects that were not funded because some of the funds were used for COVID was allocated in the 2021. So yung portion po ng mga funds na hindi na pondohan noong 2020 kasama po sa 2021 budget.
Because I do not want that all of us will be principals by indispensable cooperation if we will pass this proposed budget. Kasi ang 2020 na budget is already a law. hindi po pwede ibaliwala yan. Funding that may come 2021, it may even come 2022, but it should not be included in the 2021 budget guided by the provisions of Article 7, Section 22. Dahil the law says in Section 22, every regular session within 30 days from the start of the regular session, the President will submit a proposed budget to Congress. Meaning, itong SONA niya for last July, ang pag-uusapan lang po dito sa Kongreso, ang proposed budget for 2021. Ano ba ang kailangan gastusin? It should not include the 2020 unfunded projects. Otherwise, magkakaroon talaga tayo ng double appropriation, which is a criminal offense, Mr. Chair. Ulitin ko po, I'm sure hindi ito kasalanan ng Dpwh. Somebody else must have committed the mistake, but even if it was a mistake, Article 365 of the revised penal code is quite clear. Yung reckless imprudence that emanated from that is punishable. So, ano po ang gagawin natin, Mr. Chair? Considering na talagang nagkakaroon tayo ng double appropriation dito, ipinasok ang budgeted na project sa 2020 dito sa 2021. Point lang, Mr. Chair, kung hindi napunduhan, mapupunduhan yan dahil mandato po yan ng Constitution, mandato po yan ng batas. But to include that again, dahil hindi napunduhan sa 2020, dito sa 2021 budget, medyo delikado tayo. We will become principals by indispensable cooperation, if not by direct participation, Mr. Chair. Ano po ba ang direction ng good secretary dyan?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to recognize Undersecretary Ramos. He's one of our legal undersecretaries.
Undersecretary Ramos, you're recognized.
To help shed some light on this situation from a legal perspective.
Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, the way we understand it po, yung budget po na naka-FLR, which was again incorporated into the 2021 budget, was done pursuant to the Bayanihan Law, which basically authorized the executive, the president, to realign release and unreleased obligations po. And it can be revived within the period of 2 years. So it was done po within the context of the Bayanihan Law, Mr. Chair.
That will be your last question. Congressman Veloso, you have consumed your 3 minutes already.
Well, magse-second round na lang sana po. Pero,
Mr. Chairman.
Okay na lang.
Mr. Chairman, Congressman Veloso.
Manifestation na lang.
Mr. Chairman, I'm giving my 3 minutes to Congressman Veloso.
Okay, you can proceed, Congressman Veloso.
Thank you for that. Remember that the Bayanihan Law is a plain statute, a plain public act. It cannot overrule the Constitution. And number two, my understanding of the Bayanihan 2 is that all unfinished projects, meaning all projects na hindi completed, ikukumpleto po natin. Okay? But, halimbawa, 2018, 2019, katulad ng problema ko, hindi napunduhan sa 2020, hindi napunduhan sa 2021. Pwedeng punduhan yan sa 2021. But, because budgeting is one thing, funding is another. Completing an uncompleted project is a matter of policy na dapat aayusin ng Dpwh if we do not want na magkakaroon tayo ng criminal liability under Article 365 of the Revised Penal Code. Uulitin ko, walang problema even sa Bayanihan 2. But even if we have a problem, remember that we cannot pass a law that is unconstitutional. Sagutin po sana, Mr. Chair, Nathaniel Ramos.
Yusek Ramos, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, we agree po, no? Of course po, we will abide by the Constitution, but the Bayanihan Law is also clear po, and until and unless it's declared by the Supreme Court as unconstitutional, ang mandato po namin sa executive is to implement the law unless declared unconstitutional. So there's a presumption po of the constitutionality of the law, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, under the doctrine of contemporaneous legislation, it is understood we are all law students. We used to be law students. Under the doctrine of contemporaneous legislation, all laws that are to be passed should bear in mind and take into account the precepts existing current legislation. Tanungin ko lang po si Attorney Ramos, Mr. Chair, ano ang specific provision sa Bayanihan 2 na nagsasabi na ang 2020 unfunded projects ay kailangan ipasok sa 2021 proposed budget?
Yusek Ramos.
Mr. Chair, the way we understand it, Mr. Chair, there's a provision which empower the President to realign, reallocate, and revive the appropriations po that which were used for the COVID-19 pandemic response for the next 2 years. We think po that was the basis for the DBM to eventually incorporate the portion of the appropriation sa 2021 po.
Mr. Chair, material pala yung citation ng Bayanihan Law.
You have 1 minute more, Congressman Veloso.
Okay, Chair. The President indeed has that power to realign under Bayanihan 2. But the power to realign sa budget 2021 belongs to Congress. Take a look at Section 25, Article 6, Paragraph 1. We cannot increase, but we can decrease the proposed budget. And in the process, we can realign. It is Congress that can realign the 2021 budget. Palusot na lang po ang yung argument na dahil sinabi sa Bayanihan 2. I know because the President is a lawyer, alam niya that he has a tremendous power, but he doesn't want to commit unconstitutional acts. Hindi natin pwede pagsabuhin ng Presidente at ang Kongreso. Alam ng Presidente kung nasaan ang hangganan niya, and this is a matter of Constitution po. Wala akong nakita sa Bayanihan 2 which says that the Dpwh can realign, or the President of the Dpwh can realign unfunded projects sa 2020 at ibibigay mo sa 2021 budget. That will be all, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Congressman Veloso. Next to interpellate is coming from the minority, and this time I'll call on. I'll go back to Congressman Caraps Paduano if he is now in the Zoom. Caraps Paduano, if not, then we'll proceed to the next interpellator from the minority, Congressman Carlos Zarate.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear, yes. Proceed, Congressman Zarate.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Magandang hapon po sa lahat. Gusto ko lang sundan yung mga tanong ni Congressman Veloso, Mr. Chair, no? Para lang mailinaw. Gusto ko lang linawin, Mr. Chair, from Dpwh, nung unang pag-present nila, there is this amount no, na 397.2 billion na appears to be lump sum. And they said na meron namang mga details yan at yun nga yung sinasabi nilang nasa annexes. Unang tanong ko, ito ba yung sinasabi na mga proyekto na FLR at ngayon nga isinama na, FLR for 2020 at ngayon nga isinama na sa 2021 budget, Mr. Chair?
The budget that we submitted includes projects that are continuing from the previous year. So there's no lump sum. I think it's when we submitted the annex, kompleto na po. That's the full NAP. So all the details are available for the perusal.
Yes, Mr. Chair. That's why my question is, ito po bang kung may details na ito, may as contained in that supposed annexes, itong 397.2 billion, ito ba yung tinutukoy ng ating mga kasamahan, Mr. Chair, na FLR for 2020 na itinawid, no? Inilagay sa 2021 budget, Mr. Chair.
I'm not familiar. I don't know what the 300. When you say yung 300, I don't know hindi ko po alam yung mga details. If you can furnish us with the details specifically of what these amounts are related to, we can give a more definitive answer.
But yan ho nakita natin sa NEP, no, na merong buo doon, lump sum, na nasa central office, that's 397 billion. And ang explanation previously was that ito yung mga nahuli, inihabol na nasa annexes. But at any rate, Mr. Chair, may I just inquire, magkano ba talaga ang kabuuang amount, no, nung sinasabing FLR, Mr. Chair?
I'd like to recognize Yusek Cabral from our planning.
Yusek Cabral, you are now recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The total FLR in 2020 is around 271 billion, Mr. Chair.
271 billion, and itong 271 billion na ito, Mr. Chair, ay ipinasok sa 2021 budget. Tama ba, Mr. Chair?
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, Yusek Cabral is.
Mr. Chair, the half of the 271 will be released this year, and the other half is included in the 2021 Dpwh proposal, Mr. Chair.
So 50-50. Kaya ko nililinaw yan, Mr. Chair, no? Dahil there was earlier nung mga reports na ginawa according to doon sa Bayanihan 1, no, na inilabas natin, there was already a report by the DBM, Mr. Chair, which says that by as early as June of 2020, no, this year, ang sinabi ng DBM, 92.3% or 3.78 trillion of the national budget were already released, no? And in fact, na-release na yan, no? So, ang tanong ko, kung na-release na yan at presumably kasama dyan yung mga proyekto, sinasabi ba ng DPWH na wala namang natigil na mga proyekto para sa buong taon na ito, Mr. Chair?
What is the question, Mr. Chair? Kung yung sinasabi ng 92%, are you asking us to comment on the DBM?
Yes, as of June 20, Mr. Chair, the DBM said it has already released 92.3 of our national budget for 2020. No? So, ibig sabihin ba nito na despite this pandemic, no, at lahat ng mga proyekto halos na na-propose for 2020
last 30 seconds.
Na-release naman yung budget at gumana, Mr. Chair?
Well, I think there's still, with regards to the FLR, there's still some portion of that has to be released. Of course, I cannot comment directly on the numbers of the DBM because I don't know. I can't. I'm not in a position to give comments on the statistics of the DBM. But I can speak for our department. Of course, that is some of our. But our projects now are continuing. We've already set down the guidelines for construction. Of course, we met challenges because, as you know, during the beginning of this pandemic, we had to shut down all of our construction. So this, of course, affected us somehow. But as of now, we're all systems go in construction. And tuloy-tuloy naman po.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if, as
this will be your last question,
Kong Zarate, of the 271 billion budget, no, na sinasabing FLR, 50% nito ay kalahati ay i-release this year and the other 50% will be released next year. Yun po yung siguro gusto kong sundan na punto ni Congressman Veloso, no? Na the same project, kung hindi naman siya identified as multi-year project, ay it appears na magkakaroon ng double entry or double funding, Mr. Chair, no? Which is I think not allowed, no? So pwede ba natin marinig ang comment ng DPWH on this part, Mr. Chair?
We do have with regards to this concept, we do in our department we have a device called the multi-year contractual authority, which allows us to bid multi-year projects in a single in one bidding. So it can be a project kasi sa mga large scale projects mahirap naman kung i-chop yung contract lalo na po pag tulay hindi naman pwedeng i-award to two different contractors. It's not practical, it's not efficient, and it might even be dangerous. But that's why there's this device that we call the multi-year contractual authority, wherein the bidding for the whole project can be done, even though the timeline and the release of the funds is done over a multi-year period. So that's the concept behind that. It's a continuation of an existing project, and that has been, and for infrastructure projects, it's a very practical device because, as you know, it's not the release of funds for any flagship project is not a straight line releases over a year. It's a curved line. The financial calendar is different. The implementation is different, and it's over multi-year. So there's really a device designed specifically for multi-year projects.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
You have consumed your 3 minutes already, Kong.
Last point na lang, Mr. Chair, no?
Proceed.
Related.
Yeah. Last question.
Yes. I observed, Mr. Chair, no, in these past years that the DPWH, especially now that it is entering into some convergence projects with other agency, ay parang overwhelmed ang DPWH, no? Now, for example, kung titingnan natin yung budget niya in the past years, in 2016, parang 384 billion ang nasa DPWH, but in actual, DPWH spent 425 billion, no? And then, for example, in 2019, 549 billion, 637 billion in 2018. Ang actual niya is 696 billion, no? So in certain years, actual expenditure of DPWH apparently exceeds what it is appropriated for. And nakita rin ito ng COA, Mr. Chair, in some of its reports, no? So may we get a comment from the DPWH on this, Mr. Chair? Because these figures tells us that apparently DPWH, no, is utilizing more than, for example, what it was allocated for. But there are also years na yung kanyang budget naman ay hindi niya nauubos, no? Dahil halimbawa in 2016, merong unobligated allotment that reverted back to the national treasury. That's I think 30.4 billion, no? In 2018, 51.7 billion. In 2017, 51.7 billion, and in 2018, it's 55.85 billion, Mr. Chair. So maliit yung kanyang allocation, pero in actual, malaki yung kanyang
Time is up. Please wind up.
Total appropriations niya, meron pa rin mga unobligated obligation allotment, Mr. Chair, that reverted back to the national treasury. May we get a comment, Mr. Chair?
Yes, we spoke often. There's a lot of comments about this utilization issue, but let me just give the real numbers. For instance, in terms of fund utilization, just for everyone's information, in this administration, and I'll do a comparison from 2016 to 2019, we had allotments of 2.5 trillion pesos, of which we had an obligation rate of about 88%, and we had a disbursement rate of about 80%. This was from 2016 to 2019. Just to give you a point of comparison, for instance, from 2012, the same time period, from 2012 to 2015, we had allotments of 1.15 trillion, obligations of 907 billion, and disbursements of 714. That's a disbursement rate. So in this administration, disbursement rate approximately for a similar period for a similar time frame went up from 62% to 80%. The obligation rate went up from 78 to 88%. And hindi ko naman sinasabi na perfect po, but I just want to dispel this notion that there's a lot of improvements in terms of the implementation of projects during this administration. Because we know that disbursements, physical accomplishment is always a function of disbursements. So in terms of implementation, I think it's quite, we're doing our best. We've done a lot of changes, computerization, to make our operations more efficient. With regards to your question about specifically those releases from, again, I go back to what I said before, which is the nature of civil works is that it has a different calendar than, pag sweldo naman every year may isang release every month. Release sila up to the point that last months you can re-anticipate. But again, for civil works projects, you have releases over a span of can be as several years, and it's not a straight line. It's not a straight line release. So it's really the nature of infrastructure is different. The financial calendar is also different from the physical calendar. But if you want more specifics, Mr. Chair, I can ask. We have our finance people here. We can submit a report to give you more enlightenment on how our processes for releasing money and why in some years there's previous releases from the previous years and what's the reason for that.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chair. We appreciate if a report will be submitted to the committee as well as to this representation.
Thank you, thank you.
Mr. Chairman, just one quick question.
Yes, Mr.
Just
Congressman
a
Delivery,
policy
yes.
question. There is a question by a lot of people. Will the same contractor implementing the project now, which is an FLR, will he be the same contractor who will implement it the succeeding year?
If there is a multi-year contractual authority and the contract was bidded out as such, and even though if it's a multi-year, the whole amount has already been bidded out, and it will be the contractor who won the bidding that will implement the project. It's similar to what I said before. Like even in certain projects, it's not practical to separate it, to cut up the project into different amounts or different into smaller projects. So that's the essence of MICA. So if there is a MICA, even though the project is a multi-year, the whole amount has already been bidded out, and the cash allocation will be over a span of several years, but definitely the same contractor.
Thank you. Before we proceed, the chair would like to recognize the presence of Deputy Speaker Dong Gonzales. The next to interpolate coming from the minority from the majority is Congressman Eric Olivares.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Secretary Villar, resource persons from the Dpwh, and my esteemed colleagues. Actually, I have a lot of questions concerning my district that I want to ask, but I would just reserve them for now. Allow me to zero in a policy concern. I'd like to seek clarification regarding the wisdom behind the prioritization of fund allocations for Dpwh projects, particularly to those emanating from the Metro Manila District Engineering Offices. To lay the foundation of my question, Mr. Chair, allow me, Your Honor, to share the experience of my district, the 1st District of Parañaque City. Of my 19 second Metro Manila Engineering Office funded projects amounting to 746 million, most of which were requests coming from my constituents and barangay leaders, only six thereof in the amount of 70 million were included in the list I received. Sadly, majority of these projects are flood control projects, which have already been requested and deleted from the NEP for 2 consecutive years now. When I sought an explanation from our district engineer, I was dismayed to get an "I don't know, sir" answer. Later on, someone from the 2nd Metro Engineering Office explained that the central office uses scorecards, of which flood control is prioritized. This is mind-boggling for me because if flood control is of prime importance, why is the central office funded construction of the phase 5 of the revetment wall, sheet piling of Baclaran Channel where the Redemptorist Church is located at, overturned its phases 2, 3, and 4, which are 3 of the slashed priority projects. So I would like to ask our dear Secretary to shed light on this. My question is it true that there exist scorecards that the central office uses in prioritizing infrastructure projects? If there are, this representation would like to ask the criteria in those scorecards, which considered phase 5 of the construction of revetment, sheet piling of higher importance than phases 2, 3, and 4 thereof. I would like to ask our dear Secretary to comment on that.
Mr. Chair, if regarding this concern with to begin with, we can, with regards to that particular case, perhaps we can in fact, I think I set a meeting with the good congressman to discuss these specific concerns, and I'm more than open. The budget's a very it's not an exact science, and that's why I always take time to discuss it with the. They're very valid. I think your concerns are very valid, and of course, while we have a system for grading, prioritizing. I mean, it's not a perfect system, and of course, being on the ground, you can give us better insight, Mr. Chair. The congressman can give us better insight, Mr. Chair. So that being said, I can, with regards to the specific, I can speak to, and I've already set an appointment with our good congressman to discuss the specifics so that we can be clarified on this issue.
Very much, Your Honor, Secretary Villar, and I hope that the deleted projects in my districts, as requested by my constituents, be implemented before my third term ends. Thank you very much, Speaker, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kong Olivares. Next from the minority, Congressman Sergio Dagook.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon, my esteemed colleagues, and to the DPWH family, headed by Secretary Villar. Actually, Mr. Chair, I have already initially discussed these issues with the Secretary and Yusek Ramos when we invited them in the minority. However, for record purposes, I am raising this issue again. I would just like to ask for the record if all of the projects that will be implemented next year and in the ongoing or succeeding projects, if the project cost already includes the compensation for the relocation of poles for electric cooperatives, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Secretary.
Yes, can I ask Yusek Ramos to answer that question?
Yusek Ramos is recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Actually po yung as we have discussed po before, the compensation of poles is always considered po as part of the right-of-way requirement. Now, we just have to distinguish po yung obstructing and affected facilities, but this has already been sufficiently addressed by the joint circular with the DOE, with the DOE. Kagaya ko sabi namin, we will always coordinate po with the electric cooperatives for this purpose po.
Mr. Chair, so does the answer means that sufficiently the project cost now of all the projects to be implemented sufficiently covered the cost of compensation for the qualified relocation of poles?
Yusek Ramos.
As much as possible po, we try to cover it, pero meron pa rin ho kasi mga outstanding claims kami na tinatawag na, again, we're still trying to address po the issue of funding para ho ma-address din po yung mga outstanding claims po ng mga cooperatives natin.
Mr. Chair, can we not address that in this particular fiscal year? Can we not address that? Because we are always blamed for those unrelocated poles, but most of the cases, the reason why it is not relocated is due to the delayed or non-payment of the relocation of poles. No, when in fact the government is aware that electric cooperatives in its tariff or electricity rate does not include that. That's why there is a law which compensate the relocation. So can we not address that in this fiscal year, Mr. Chair?
Yusek Ramos, can you reply?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, yes, meron po kaming budget for that. Well, actually under the 2020 and I think the proposed NEP 2021, we have allocated for that po.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all for this representation.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Next.
Yusek Ramos and Secretary Miguel.
Next, from the majority, Congressman Eric Martinez. Kong Eric Martinez. I think he's not in the Zoom now, so we'll proceed to the next interpellator from the majority, Congressman Abdullah Di Mapuro. Congressman Abdullah Di Mapuro.
Mr. Chairman, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just would like, first of all, to thank Secretary Villar and his companions for what they are doing for us in the province of Lanao del Norte. However, we still need more of their assistance, especially because we are now addressing the problem of our unity, the unity of Muslims and Christians, for us to have continuous peace and order. The interior municipalities of Lanao del Norte needs their help. But the problem is that if they look at perhaps the qualifications of the area, they'll probably see that the people in each of the municipality are not enough to give them the projects that they need for them to have efficient transportation of their goods. Because of the size, I hope that they will consider that the problem we had with the MNLF, one of the reasons for the problem is because some saw the neglect of the national government for their area, comparing the development by the national government of their area to the areas in the Visayas and also in Luzon. This sentiment is still with our people. This is the reason why I am appealing to our good secretary to understand our need for development. It is not only economic, but the sentiment of our people, if it breaks again to a big problem, like what happened with the MNLF, then economic development of the area will be greatly affected. That is my manifestation, Mr. Chairman, and I'd like to point further that an example of our problem that we see is that our budget in 2021 is bigger than what we saw that will be given to us in 2021. And then our share of I forgot the name of the motor vehicle users charge. We don't have any share of it for year 2021. So these are small things, but many of our people will see the negligence or as if we are a secondary citizen of our country. So this is just a manifestation, Mr. Chairman, and I hope the good secretary and his companions will understand our situation, that we are working very hard to have peace in the province of Lanao del Norte. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman Di Mapuro.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I'd like to thank Congressman Dimaporo and like to Mr. Chairman, we share the advocacy that we really need to push the infrastructure, and we will continue to help you, sir. If when we meet, we can meet and we can discuss how else we can add on to the help of your already under your very progressive leadership.
Next to interpolate.
Thank you. Thank you.
Next to interpolate from the minority, Congresswoman Janet Garen. Congresswoman Janet Garen, if you are in the Zoom. If none, then we'll proceed to the next interpellator. From the minority, again, I will call Karaps Paduano if he's around in the Zoom. If he's not around, then I will now proceed to the majority. Tapos na ang minority, so majority na lang lahat. From the majority, the next interpellator is Vice Chairman Paul Dasa.
Chairman, thank you very much. I'd like to confirm, Mr. Chair, that Congressman Jerbo Espina gave me his 3 minutes.
Yes.
Yes, Mr. Chair.
Okay, so please don't count that on my 6 minutes. As much as possible, may I request our resource persons, because of the limited time, if you could answer with a yes or a no, please answer with just a yes or a no. My first question is to the DBM, Mr. Chair. Based on the DBM 2021 NEP submission, is it correct that the 2019 unused appropriations is 321 billion pesos?
Anybody from DBM?
Mr. Chair,
You are
Grace
recognized.
De Los Santos from DBM, sir.
Yes, proceed, please.
Based po sa report na sinadmit ng Dpwh sa amin, that's correct, sir.
This is for national, Mr. Chair. 321 billion for 2019 national consolidated unused appropriations.
Mr. Chair, tama po yun, sir.
Okay. Thank you. And for the 2020 adjusted unused appropriations, in my understanding, Mr. Chair, adjusted means it included Bayanihan 1, and it's an estimated amount of what will be unobligated allotments, unreleased appropriations, and its lump sum as unused, projected unused appropriations for year-end 2020 of 461 billion. Is that correct?
Binigay mo na. Binigay mo na 3 minutes.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
tama
DBM.
po.
Proceed,
Thank you
please.
po.
Okay. Of the 2019, 321 billion unused appropriations, DPWH composed 83 billion of that. Meaning year-end 2019, DPWH had unreleased, unused appropriations of 83 billion. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair, it is correct.
Okay. For the information of the committee and the chairman, there was 83 billion left over unused year-end. My question to DPWH is how much of the 83 billion unused 2019 appropriations is still available as of today or as of the recent reports that you have?
Okay, Mr. Chair, I'd like to recognize from our planning, USEC Kathy.
Undersecretary Cabral, you have the floor.
Mr. Chair, I have no figures on hand, but what I know from our finance service, that the appropriations for 2019 were already reported and returned to the Department of Budget and Management as declaration, I believe, for the savings for the utilization of COVID. And I'd like the Finance Service Assistant Secretary to confirm me on that, Mr. Chair.
Assistant Secretary
Marie Palafox, who I believe
Marie
is in
Palafox, if
Zoom.
you are around, please answer.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Out of the unobligated balances of capital outlays for 2019, the unobligated balance as of August 31 is 10.8 billion only.
How about, Mr. Chair, unreleased appropriations of 2019? Because that's only the unobligated allotment. How much is the unreleased appropriation?
Who can answer this question?
May I refer to the DBM for the unreleased
DBM, please.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, may I be recognized, Mr.
Yes,
Chair?
you're recognized. Please proceed.
Of the unreleased APRO, most of this was already pulled and pursuant to RA 11469 to fund the COVID-19. What is left is only for FAPs and for a little portion for right-of-way acquisition. But most of 2019 unreleased APRO was already no longer available, Mr. Chair.
No, Mr. Chair, of that 16 billion, my information is 16 billion unreleased. How much is still unreleased as of August?
DBM?
1 billion for foreign assisted projects and 300 million for right-of-way acquisition, Mr. Chair.
So, meaning there's about 12 billion, Mr. Chair, of available 2019 appropriations still available, Mr. Chair. May I ask the DPWH to submit to the committee a report on the 83 billion use, whether it's COVID or otherwise, because I think this is germane to my next points regarding our 2021 budget, Mr. Chair. Could we ask them for a report?
Mr. Secretary, can you submit?
We'll submit the requested report.
Okay, thank you.
Secretary, because of the pandemic, our GDP is down, and DPWH, the agency, is a critical agency, one of the most critical in our country. It contributes to our national economy, provides employment. Would it be fair to say that the Secretary supports the pump priming to help our economy?
Yes, definitely. And even we are really pushing for these standards so that we can resume our construction at the soonest possible time, because we realize that despite the COVID, we still have to make sure that our economy is running at least on a level that would allow us to feed our people, to keep jobs existing. So yes, to answer your question, Mr. Chair, I do support this.
Thank you. And setting aside, just limiting to the House of Representatives, let's set aside Secretary, DBM, DOF, and NEDA, politics or whatever it may be. If there are available appropriations this year, 2020, would it then be good strategy to fund all 2020 projects from the current year appropriations 2020? It's just a yes or a no.
Well, it's difficult for me. We're not the agency who's in charge of appropriating these funds. I wouldn't want to second guess the use of the DBM and the Office of the President for use of savings. But
no, Mr. Chairman, my question was setting aside DBM, DOF, and it's because the House who appropriated in 2020, we have a law. My question is simple. Isn't it good strategy to pump prime the economy, which you admitted, and our GDP is down? My question is just a yes or no.
Pump priming is good for the economy, yes. That's correct, Mr. Chairman.
And it would, okay, thank you. And it would be good to appropriate 2020 appropriations to fund 2020 projects. Thank you for that. The FLRs carried over to 2021, 135 billion of that was appropriated in 2020. Wouldn't it be good policy, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chair, that those projects be substituted with new projects to now also support pump priming and employment for 2021? And that's all. That's just a yes or a no.
If their fiscal space allows, we think pump priming is a good strategy. But of course, it has to be keeping in mind that we do have that DOF is keeping monitoring the fiscal health also of the country.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I'm in the same position as Congressman Veloso. I think it's a double appropriation putting the 135 billion in the 2021. And let me note that we cannot quote Bayanihan 1 because that expired in June. And the net was submitted sometime, I think, August or September. In the Bayanihan 2, I wanted to ask the Secretariat to do a share screen, but let me quote na lang, Mr. Chair, in Bayanihan 2, page 33, and if you could note that, Secretary and Yusek Ramos, it says what Yusek Ramos said earlier. Notwithstanding any law to the contrary, the President is hereby authorized to realign and reprogram of PAPs and utilize the funds to priority programs for PPEs, isolation, treatment facilities, construction of hospitals, and all of that. But if you read, Mr. Chair, right after that provision...
That will be your last question. You have consumed your 6 minutes already.
6 minutes na ba yun,
Mr. Chairman,
6
may
minutes
I
already.
be recognized?
Let me finish. It says
yes,
Congressman,
that appropriations for infrastructure projects shall not be subject of reprogramming and realignment. Did the Secretary or the USEC see that provision? That infra projects cannot be reprogrammed or realigned in Bayanihan 2.
Hindi.
Meaning the 2021 FLRs may be illegal as mentioned by Congressman Veloso.
I'd like to recognize Yusek Ramos.
Yusek Ramos, you're recognized.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Yung bayanihan law po kasi yung number one yung naging basis for the discontinuance of the PAPs po during the COVID pandemic, which was yun nga po, it will be supplemented in the 2021 budget. It's the Bayanihan Law 1 which also provides for the revival of those PAPs for the next 2 years. At during that time po, the Bayanihan Law 1 was still effective, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, the NEP was submitted after the expiration of Bayanihan 1. And let me note to the good USEC, Mr. Chair, that these projects are not discontinued because the good Secretariat said that the SAROs for the FLRs will be issued within the next 3 weeks. So that provision doesn't even apply. And the more recent law, Bayanihan 2, specifically states, Mr. Chair, and I want the Committee on Appropriations to know this because it's a major issue of double appropriations, that appropriations for infrastructure projects shall not be subject of reprogramming and realignment, page 34, number 7. Now, last na lang, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair.
That's your last question.
May I ask the good Secretary a listing of the FLRs this year nationwide, when the FLRs were issued, which district, which amounts, and contract amount, because Mr. Chair, a few people have texted me that some FLRs were awarded, but not in equal amounts, meaning my understanding is 50% of all projects this year will be funded. And that's why they carried over 50% 2021. but some SAROs were only 15-20% of the contract amount, but in some districts, there were 60, 70, 80%. So may I request, Mr. Chair, for the DPWH to give us a list of the release of their requests and DBM release of SAROs with the pertinent information on contract amount, congressional district, and amount of SARO, Mr. Chair. And that will be my last.
Yes, Mr. Chair, we will submit to the committee. Thank you.
Okay, please submit to the Committee on Appropriation the requested list. Mr. Secretary. Thank you. We'll now proceed to the next interpellator. Again, from the minority, that I will call again Congresswoman Janet Garin if he's in the Zoom. If not, then we'll proceed to the majority. Congressman Edgar Chato.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Secretary and the rest of the DPWH family. First, just quickly, let me thank Secretary Villar for the support to my district and to Bohol. Just want to know what is the present percentage of national roads concreted in terms of length vis-a-vis that which are not yet completely paved. I'm asking this question because the national funds, of course, goes to other works if we have already 100% completion, upgrading works, shouldering, bike lanes, drainage, lighting. Also, this is connected to the fact that if national roads are already up and done, then local roads will also have a good focus. This is also very much related to the programs on Roll It and the FMRs and also the tourism road. Senator Gordon and I crafted the Tourism Act of 2009. That's 95-93. And we opened the doors for what we call the tourism connectivity under the TRIPS program. But our intention was really to have longer roads for concreting because that will be the essential element of tourism. I noticed that there are allocations that are only up to 5 million for tourism. I was wondering if there is a change in a shift in the policy setup. Mr. Chair.
The convergence programs actually they've been steadily increasing, partially because of what you said. Because as we increase the paving and the performance metrics for the national roads, as it becomes closer to 100%. Though because we create national roads, it never really reaches 100%, but we're very close to that. As you're correct, as it increases, we can see an increase in other programs, which meaning local roads that serve a national purpose. So in regards to convergence, yes, there is an increase in convergence programs because we also have the Roll It, that's a new program, and we'll continue to support these local infrastructure projects with a national use or national character.
Mr. Chair, I would wish to request DPWH Secretary to check on the allocation of a road that goes all the way to the Chocolate Hills from the cruise ship port in Loon via Antiquera. It is only given 5 million now. This needs actually 50 million. This is the connectivity that the Tourism Act really intends to address. My second question is MVUC. Do we still have this? And are they? What is the guidelines for releasing this? Because this can address street lights, signages for tourism, asphalt overlays. Is this still open and distributed?
Yes, it's still open. So yes, it's still open. Although now it's a part of the ceiling of the NEP. So unlike in previous, it has a different character now because it's really part of our. It's not a budget that anytime there's no longer a road for it. So it's different. And but definitely these projects we can still coordinate with regards to Mr. Chair. With regards to specific concerns, I'll be more than happy to discuss these. We can set a meeting with and discuss these Roll It and these tourism convergence to see where we can further improve our level of service to the district.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Final question. I would like to know the status of the Panglao Island, Tagbilaran
Connector Bridge. When I was governor, this was pushed and supported also by Secretary Villar. But when I checked with NEDA, they were saying that the NEDA review of DPW under DPWH project has yet to be responded to. NEDA is waiting for comments on the recommendations. They had recommendations, and they were also making follow-ups on August 21, September 1, September 18. And they were quite, there were issues that they wanted the DPWH to respond to. I want to know, is this going to be under ODA, because it has to pass through NEDA and ICC.
Yeah, I think it was offered as a. There's part of it was a local. The approaches have already been finished. Can I ask Yusek Emil to give some more specific details regarding
Yusek Emil, you're
Panglao
recognized.
Tagbilaran
Yeah.
connector?
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman, Your Honor. The Panglao Tagbilaran Bridge is actually a top-of-the-line projects of the government, and this is actually proposed under the ODA of China Exim Bank under grant financing. Somehow, there was in the past 2 locations for this project, but having said, when this was actually singled out into one, since it will be serving the same traffic count surveys and the same locations, it was moved to only 1 location, which is now the final Panglao Tagbilaran Bridge, where the approaches on both sides of the islands are actually ongoing. So it's only a matter of perfection, Mr. Chair. I agree to the Honorable Congressman's the updates given by NEDA. It's only a matter of waiting for the ICC Technical Board schedule for its final deliberations. But somehow this will be a priority projects of the government. We're just waiting actually for the grant financing package from China Exim Bank, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. The approaches in the side of Panglao Island and in Tagbilaran City have local fundings already. It's really the bridge itself that will need approval from NEDA, ICC, and the ODA. So those are all my questions, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much again for your continued support. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you. Next to interpolate is Congresswoman Ria Vergara from the majority. Congresswoman Ria Vergara, are you in the Zoom? I think she's not around, so we will proceed to the next interpellator, Congresswoman Micaela Biolago. Congresswoman Micaela Biolago.
Good afternoon.
Yes, please proceed, ma'am.
Hindi po, konti lang po ang katanungan ko tungkol dito sa DPWH. Gusto ko lang po sanang malaman, sa ginawa pong budgeting ng DPWH, meron po bang particular allocation per congressman?
Per district engineering office po yung allocation, I guess yung allocation categories per categories, district engineering office or regional office.
Thank you po, Secretary Villar. Mr. Chair, my next question po, regarding to sa ating FLR, ano po, kasi may mga FLR tayo na from 2020, parang meron pa ho ata yung iba, parang 2019 pa 2020, ngayon po, isinama uli sa 2021. I just want to know kung this is already budgeted na yung ating FLR, baka po pwedeng ma-issuehan na ng SARO.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for that concern. We share with the same concern, and I'm confident based on the DB talks with the DB, and they'll be releasing. They will be aggressively releasing over the next month. So we are eagerly awaiting the arrival of the funds.
So most probably all the FLRs na nakasama sa NEP for 2021, they will be issued na SARO?
Well, only Sec Wendell can really answer when, but based on our talks, he's saying they're very, at this point, I know for a fact that they're very aggressively doing the paperwork and readying for the release of these funds.
So by next week po, maasahan namin na magre-release ang DBM o ang Dpwh ng memo na...
I will give you an update po. I will meet with Sec Wendell and give you a more detailed siguro pag nakausap ko na po si Sec Wendell. I will get
thank
more
you po.
detailed schedule from DBM.
Okay, thank you po. Thank you, Secretary Villar. Thank you po, Mr. Chair. That's all.
Thank you. We'll now proceed to the next interpellator from the majority again. Congressman Bong Suntay.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Secretary Mark Villar for the continued support in my district. Yung hindi ko na rin, I will not dwell on the FLRs and non-funded SAROs dahil natanong na ng mga kasama ko. I just want to air one concern, a minor concern lang naman ito. This is with regards to the road improvement ng Panay Avenue, which runs parallel to Quezon Avenue from EDSA to Scout Chuatoco. This particular street has already been na program na ito. In fact, it has been widened from 2 to 4 lanes. Meron lang natirang middle portion from Scout Reyes to Roses Avenue. In fact, I requested na sana masama yon doon sa projects to be undertaken in my district kasi sayang yung kalsada . Yun na lang, maliit na portion na lang yung hindi nasama. But unfortunately, hindi na include and I was wondering baka pwedeng ma-reconsider para lang matapos na yung improvement ng Panay Avenue.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm very open to these suggestions. Again, I always believe that these, of course, the suggestions of the Kong is coming really from the ground. So it's really the benefit for this part. So to answer your question, Mr. Chairman, yes, definitely, we are open to making changes that would further improve our service to the districts.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Congressman Bong. The next interpellator from the majority, Congresswoman Janice Salimbangon. Meron ba tayo? Meron. Yeah. Wala. Congresswoman Janice Salimbangon, are you in the Zoom? If not, then we'll proceed to the next interpellator. Deputy Speaker Rodante Marcolita. Again, okay. Tawagin ko ulit si ano. DS Rodante Marcolita, if you are in the Zoom right now. If not, then I will go back to DS Deputy Speaker Ferdinand Hernandez, if you are around.
Yes, Mr. Chair, can you hear me?
Yes, loud and clear. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Magandang hapon po sa ating chairman and then kay Secretary Mark Villar. Actually, wala po akong tatanong. This is just a manifestation of support that during the watch of Secretary Villar, you've done so much for the country in terms of implementing major infrastructure projects, including, of course, yung mga projects sa mga distrito. No? And alam ko naman na Dpwh is in good hands and ako, I'm supportive of any increase in the budget. Alam ko naman, pinagkakasya yung lahat. Yung budget at hindi naman lahat mapapagbigyan. And I think we do recognize that every time may budget ho, talaga namang may discretion naman yung national agencies kung saan yung mga ibang priority projects. Hindi naman pantay-pantay lahat. Hindi naman pantay-pantay yung mga situation ng bawat distrito. And we have to give it to the Secretary. May prerogative naman si Secretary in allocating funds. And he has never been very political in implementing projects. No? In fact, I appreciate his effort going out of his way, meeting individually yung representatives to discuss parochial issues, no? And bihira ho yan. And of course, hindi lang yan. Kung magaling yung secretary, magaling din po yung Region 12, no? Parating top performer. And of course, my regional director is si Bashir Ibrahim, no? And ang district engineer ko naman is si Khalil. And of course, my assistant district engineer si Benedict Amido. So top performer po yung second district ng South Coast recently, and of course ang Region 12. And hopefully, Mr. Secretary, mapansin ng konti, baka madagdagan pa ng budget yung buong Region 12. And ako po, very supportive. Congratulations, Secretary. Congratulations to DP family. You've done a good job. And in spite may COVID, no let up. Tuloy-tuloy pa rin yung proyekto. And you've been very, very important in our recovery, even against COVID and yung economic recovery natin. Maraming salamat. Yun lang po, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And congratulations. The Region 12 has been very impressive in their performance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
The next interpellator coming from the majority, Deputy Speaker Pimentel. Is he around? Wala na. The next is Congresswoman Jam Barunda. So, wala. Next, Congresswoman Tyrone Agabas. Yeah.
Hello.
Yes, yeah, proceed, Kong. Congressman Tyrone Agabas, can you now, are you around? Baka nawala na naman.
Good afternoon.
Ayun, yeah. Please proceed.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone. This is just a manifestation, Mr. Chairman. In behalf of the 6th District of Pangasinan, please allow me to express my gratitude to the good secretary, the Honorable Mark Villar, to Yusek Cathy Cabral, to all the undersecretaries, assistant secretaries, to our regional director, Ronel Tan, who has always been very helpful to us, and to all the men and women of the Dpwh who, despite the threat of COVID-19, brave the COVID front lines in the name of public service. Well, just like other congressmen, Mr. Chairman, I also have serious valid concerns in my district. Secretary, sir, I have already discussed and expressed the urgent concerns of my district with you and submitted my letter appeal. Thank you for listening to us. I take that as a good gesture of genuine concern. Secretary, I would like to reiterate, though, my appeal in behalf of the people of the 6th District of Pangasinan. For emphasis, our district, DEO3, has initiated, listed, and validated 42 priority flood control projects, which were ultimately endorsed by the Regional Development Council. But not a single one from this validated list was funded. These projects are either continuation or completion of existing gaps. Until today, I am too worried until now, Mr. Secretary, dahil napakadaming major and allied river tributaries sa aking distrito. Nandito po sa distrito ko ang San Roque Dam, the biggest in the country and the 16th biggest in the world, which absorbs all water discharges from Binga and ang Buklao Dam in the Mountain Province and the Cordillera Mountains. Ito ang tubig na bumababa sa Pangasinan along the Agno River palabas ng South China Sea via the Lingayen Gulf. We need strong dikes, Mr. Secretary, to protect our people, as we, during typhoons, are always at the forefront of flood-related calamities because of our limited resources and geographical location. I will not be raising questions, Mr. Secretary, but just this gentle manifestation of appeal for support. So in behalf of the people of the 6th District of Pangasinan, I reiterate and repeat my appeal to you, Mr. Secretary, as we are hopeful that our concerns will be correspondingly addressed. As member of this committee, I will support all moves increasing the budget of the DPWH to correspondingly sustain the demand fund for infrastructure projects in the country, consistent with the Build program of the President. Again, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and stay safe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and we will, of course, we will, as per discussions, we will do our best to address these concerns.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Next, to interpellate, Congresswoman Lourdes Arroyo.
I will just read. Mr. Chairman. Ayun na ba siya? Okay. There is a, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed. On behalf of Congresswoman Arroyo.
Yes, she sent a text message and I would like to read her manifestation, Mr. Chairman. So, yes, I would like to make a manifestation to commend our Honorable Secretary Villar for considering the persons with disabilities in his budget proposal for the Department of Public Works and Highways. The line item in the Dpwh for the construction, rehabilitation, improvement of facilities for persons with disabilities and elderlies, senior citizens, including gender-responsive facilities amounting to 480 million pesos will go a long way to improve the lives not only of the persons with disabilities but also of our senior citizens. I thank the Dpwh family for its commitment in facilitating equal access to public space, facilities, and services for our persons with disabilities, for being proactive in ensuring that the rights of persons with disabilities are respected, and for your vigilance in enforcement of the accessibility law. Again, thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Secretary Mark Villar. Mabuhay po kayo, Congresswoman Arroyo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Next to interpellate is Congresswoman Bantik Orisma.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon. Good afternoon to the family of Dpwh. My concern really is about the FLR, but that was already brought out, Mr. Chair, by Honorable Vice Chairperson Mickey Biolago. Ganon din po yung problema namin. And almost all congressmen, yun na ho yata, Mr. Secretary, ang problema. And I would like to take this opportunity to thank the Honorable Mr. Chairman, the Secretary of Dpwh, Apo Mark Villar, for giving priority to this Dalton East alternate road, which is connecting Region 2 and Region 3 here in this area. And lastly, yung aking sasabihin, Mr. Chair, kay Mr. Secretary, is about the payment po ng mga payment of those whose lot was affected by the opening of this bypass road. Ang request ko lang po, Mr. Secretary, priority should also be given to this. Alam niyo naman na ho, marami hong may mga social media na ho ngayon tayo. Since I'm the one, you know, representing my district in the national level, laging ang sisi sa akin po. Kaya I would like to request from the Secretary na kung pwede, we have to give priority to the payments of this bypass road. And mag-a-appeal ako, Mr. Chairman, kay Mr. Secretary, baka pwede naman madagdagan yung allocation ko for the Lone District of Nueva Vizcaya. Ang liit kasi maiyak-iyak na nga ako dahil ang liit-liit. So, thank you in advance. Yun lang po, Mr. Secretary, and stay safe, everyone.
Mr. Secretary, any comment?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we will do our best to help, and especially and also with this right-of-way payments, I'll look into this immediately, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We will now proceed to the next interpellator from the majority, Congressman Alan T.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mr. Secretary, and to the DPWH officials who are in attendance today in this committee. Mr. Secretary, in the proposed 2021 national budget, how much is proposed to be spent from the fund collections of the Motor Vehicles Users Charge, or MVUC?
I think it's about 50. Can I ask Yusek Kathy, how much is the exact amount?
Yusek Kati, you have the floor.
It's about 15.1 billion, Mr. Chair.
So am I correct? It's around 15,192,000,000 pesos.
Correct, Apo.
Mr. Secretary, did you earmark the MBUC funds based on Section 7 of Republic Act 8794 as amended by RA 11239, which provides that collections from the MBUC shall be earmarked solely and exclusively for the following? Letter A, 80% to the Special Road Support Fund for road maintenance and the improvement of road drainage of national, primary, and secondary roads. Letter B, 5% to the Special Local Road Fund for road maintenance of local roads, traffic management, and road safety devices. Letter C, 7.5% to the Special Road Safety Fund for the installation of traffic signs, pavement markings, and safety devices. And lastly, letter D, 7.5% to the Special Vehicle Pollution Control Fund for the air pollution control.
We allocated as per the guidelines set forth under the MVUC. Can I ask Yusek Edward Ramos to give us a little more insight on the specific?
Yusek Edward Ramos.
Yes, Mr. Chair. The allocation po was actually based on the new law, which removed that specific percentages for the local support fund, etc., Mr. Chair. Under the new law, Mr. Chair, the allocation should pertain to the construction and rehabilitations of an upgrading of roads and bridges, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. My next question, under the same law that you referred to, Republic Act 11239, provided for a Congressional Oversight Committee on the MVUC. Was the Oversight Committee consulted in the determination of what programs or projects are to be funded with the MVUC funds?
The same law, Mr. Chair, provides for the power of the Secretary to provide for the guidelines for the prioritization and identification of the projects to be funded by the MVUC. At any rate, Your Honor, of course, we will be open to the oversight function of Congress for this purpose, Your Honor.
So the Oversight Committee was not consulted on the matter?
There
Am
was
I correct? Just answer
Mr.
yes
Chair,
or
there
no.
was no
Yes
provision
or
under
no?
law. Yes, Your Honor.
Yes, okay. Thank you. So the committee, the Oversight Committee was consulted on this matter? Yes?
No, Your Honor. No.
No. So we just want to make it clear that it was not consulted. So, Mr. Secretary, how many engineering districts are there nationwide?
Yusek, can I direct the Yusek Kathy to answer the...
Undersecretary Cathy Cabral.
Mr. Chair, around 180 district offices nationwide.
180 district offices.
184 to be exact.
184. So it's 184 district offices. Can you confirm?
There are, for the record, our latest tally is 186 regular district engineering offices.
Thank you. Mr. Secretary, can you confirm that all your engineering districts have program needs for road maintenance and improvements in their respective areas of jurisdiction?
Yusek, can I recognize Yusek Kathy regarding the maintenance fund?
Yes, sir. Maintenance funds are provided for each district engineering office under our current operating expenditures, Mr. Chair.
So there's a need, program needs for road maintenance and improvements.
Correct? Yes, sir.
Can you also confirm that all or majority of your district engineering offices submitted a list of program needs for road maintenance and improvements chargeable against the MBUC fund, Mr. Secretary?
Can I confirm? We received some requests, I suppose. I'm not sure if all 186 submitted.
Congressman T, you have consumed your 3 minutes already.
Mr. Chairman, I already Congressman Go is kind enough to lend me his time as well as Congressman Lara, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
So may I proceed, Mr. Chairman?
Yes,
Thank you,
proceed.
Mr. Chairman. So majority of all the district offices submitted program needs for road maintenance, correct?
I have to confirm that, Kong. I have
Can
to
you kindly
confirm if it's a
confirm?
majority. I don't have that. I don't have that number immediately available.
Thank you. Based on the list submitted by your district offices, since you confirmed that there are district offices that submitted lists, did all the engineering districts receive MBUC funds?
I'm sorry, what's the question?
My question is, did all the engineering districts nationwide receive MBUC funds?
I'll have to confirm, but no, maybe not necessary. I'm not sure which ones, but it's an extensive list. I'll have to confirm that.
So can you please provide us, since your planning undersecretary is here, since you already submitted your NEP, because based on the figures that I think you can confirm that only 40 district offices receive MBUC funds out of 184 district offices. Can you kindly confirm, Mr. Secretary?
Can we confirm that? I don't. Can we look at? I'll have to look at the list, and if you just give us a little time, we can confirm that.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Secretary. So, Mr. Secretary, what criteria did you use to determine whether or not you will approve projects to be financed by MBUC funds?
Well, seeing as how it's part of the NEP, again, it's just requests that were given to us, and those are the basis for our allocation for MBUC. Various requests from operations.
So, Mr. Secretary, the law is very clear that earmarking of road maintenance and improvement of national primary and secondary roads should be nationwide and should be equitably distributed among all the district offices. Am I correct in saying that, Mr. Secretary?
Well, it depends. Of course, this is like the NEP. This is our proposal. Certainly, kami naman po, we submit ourselves to suggestions of Congress if they have any suggestions regarding how the budget. But this is our submission, and this is the if there are any concerns, certainly we're open to the wisdom of Congress.
So you are amenable, Mr. Secretary. Would you be amenable to revalidate and resubmit your proposed budget, particularly on MBUC fund utilization before this committee?
We can discuss. We are amenable. We submit ourselves to Congress. We will discuss with Congress and how we can best allocate if there are any suggestions. Again, we submitted this budget and we submit ourselves to Congress. So of course we are open to the suggestions of Congress.
So what do you, Mr. Secretary, what do you propose should be done to make the allocation of MBUC funds more equitable for all districts nationwide?
Siguro we will discuss. I mean, obviously, it's part of, at this point, it's a different, it's a part of the NEP. So perhaps we can, I can discuss it with we will discuss it with the House if there's any improvements that should be made. And ultimately, it'll be Congress who decides, whether this is not like the old MVUC where it's a road board that decide, we're the road board. But in this case, it's part of the national budget. So of course, this is something that the Congress will have an input in. So this is our proposed budget, but of course, Congress will always have the final say on what is approved.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So, Mr. Chairman, may I move that the proposed DPWH budget on MBUC fund utilization be returned to DPWH for its revalidation and resubmission to this committee for a more equitable distribution among the engineering districts?
Is that a form of emotion?
It's a motion, Mr. Chairman.
There was a motion that...
Since the Secretary is amenable for a revalidation or resubmission.
Any second to that motion?
Second.
There was a second.
Any objection? Hearing none, yes, it's approved.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So, Madam Undersecretary for Planning, can you resubmit to this committee a revalidated list of MBUC funds utilization for 2021 budget?
Mr. Chair,
Since the committee already approved
We-
the revalidation and resubmission of a
We will-
list of MBUC projects.
we will abide with the instruction of the committee, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Madam Undersecretary. Thank you.
Thank you.
That's all, Mr. Secretary. I'm very thankful for your straightforward answer. I'm very thankful.
Next, yeah, thank you. Next to interpellate is from the majority again, Congresswoman Cyril Abwig Saldivar. Congresswoman Cyril Abwig Saldivar, if you are around.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair.
Yes, we hear you. Please
Good
proceed.
afternoon, Secretary, and to the Dpwh family. Like some of our colleagues, Mr. Chair, we are grateful to the department, led of course by the Secretary, in looking at the needs of our district, the 2nd District of Palawan, and substantially addressing our needs, Mr. Chair. In fact, masaya po kami na yung aming pong Puerto Princesa South Road, which traverses most of the municipalities in our district, as well as the other national roads like the one along the west coast, facing the West Philippine Sea, unti-unti na pong nabubuo na, nasisemento na po at nabubuksan na po. That's why, Mr. Chair, when we received the copy of the National Expenditure Program, we were very excited to look at the projects that were targeted for our district. And we reviewed the items that were included therein. It's just that we noticed something, Mr. Chair. Under page 244 of the NEP, there appears a program which is a construction of a flood mitigation structure or a seawall located in our district, Barangay Calategas, Nara, Palawan. Now, we were also furnished, Mr. Chair, a copy of the proposed fiscal year 2021 DPWH infrastructure program based on the DPWH budget proposal submitted to DBM. This lists the proposed projects for our district, Mr. Chair. I think most of us in the House were furnished copies of this listing for all our districts. And I noticed that the Calategas Seawall project does not appear in that list, Mr. Chair. And I was just wondering if somebody can, from the department, this project, Mr. Chair, as well as some other projects that we identified, maybe some 17 other projects, did not appear in that list. So may we just ask for clarification from the department why this happened? How come it is not in the NEP?
Congresswoman, regarding this particular, I think I can best give you an answer if we can meet personally, and I can, Mr. Chair, if I can meet personally with and then discuss this particular issue, so that I can also be briefed on this for the district, this particular district.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. We are very grateful for the openness of the Secretary to look at our needs, as I've stated earlier. I brought this up because I'm very familiar, of course, with Barangay Calategas, and it being part of our district. It's a fishing village. The livelihood of our residents there is primarily fishing, and I was wondering, with the construction of a seawall, this may hamper the ease of navigation of our fishermen.
That will be your last question, ma'am.
To them, and I was wondering, considering that this project involves, of course, substantial amount of money, I was wondering if any study was made prior to this being proposed to become part of the national expenditure program. Because I'm thinking, is this money, will not this money go to waste if it turns out that it will affect our fishermen there? You know, their safety, their ease of navigation, their livelihood. Perhaps the amount will be better suited to other urgent projects in our district. Such as, for example, if top of my mind, maybe a construction of a bridge to connect the west coast of our province.
Ma'am, you have consumed your 3 minutes already.
I'm sorry.
Tapos na po yung 3 minutes. So please
Mr.
wind up.
Chair, I can address this
sorry,
question. I can meet personally with Congresswoman Mbuc to
Thank
the
you.
next few
Thank you,
days to discuss this at length, because I don't think we'll be able to resolve this issue in a few minutes. So if with the indulgence of the chair, I will set a meeting with Congresswoman to discuss this.
Thank you,
at
Mr.
length.
Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, ma'am. Next to interpolate, Congressman Rufus Rodriguez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to Secretary Mark Villar and the officialdom of the Dpwh. Just first, my first question is, the House leadership has informed us that the FLRs, all the FLRs for 2020 will be released in a month's time. Can we get confirmation from Secretary Villar and then from the DBM?
I cannot. I will speak to the DBM after this and get confirmation, and then I will confirm it with you. I haven't been in contact with him today, so. But if with the indulgence of the chair again after this meeting, I will ask the DBM to confirm.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. That's a very good answer that things will be moving, because Mr. Secretary, we see that the DBM is not the Dpwh. The DBM has set the scheme of an FLR. When I was here for the past 9 years, there were no FLRs. What is stated in the budget will be what will be released to the agencies. And so this whole matter of LFAR is against the Constitution, because the Constitution, and you have been our distinguished member of this Congress together, we were together, and it was clear that whatever we approved could not in any way be for later release, or only 50%, or that it will even be given to the next year. Our Constitution provides Section 25, Section 5, Paragraph 5. It states that no law shall be passed authorizing any transfer of appropriation. No law, not even the Bayanihan one. But that is an operative fact. That's been done. But the only people who can augment the items are the President, the Senate President, the Speaker, the Chief Justice, and the heads of the Constitutional Commission. So it's very clear. So therefore, the second reason why we appeal for the release to all FLRs, not only based on the Constitution, is because the DBM has confirmed, Secretary, that there is an projected, adjusted, and used appropriation of 461 billion for the end of this year, which will be unused appropriation. So that kind of money, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary, could be used for the 271 billion of FLRs in 2020. Don't you agree that there should therefore be the use of the unused appropriation to be able for you to request the DBM and DBM to give this 271 billion? And by the way, because, for example, you have released to my district 10 to 15% of my 446 FLRs for 2020, there is not even 271 that is left. If you get 20% from this will be only about 200 billion. And we have 461 billion. Does the Secretary see this, that this could be one good reason to do for our country to pump prime the economy? As we are saying now in my district, the regular projects that we have are moving, and people are employed, and our hardwares and our suppliers in the city are getting payment and have money and income. So we know from the Speaker whether he agrees that we release all the 271 billion, which is now remains at 200 billion, and get it from the unused appropriation.
Mr. Chair, I humbly ask because I'm neither a expert in law, and neither am I. I'm not an expert also in the DBM. I don't pretend to be an expert in how the DBM functions and their processes. But I agree with the congressman in the sense that I think we should pump prime the economy. And on our part, we really want as many projects to be finished as soon as possible. We realize that Dpwh is a source for job generation, and I will support the congressman as we try and fast track these infrastructure projects. And for me, whatever is put in our department, we will do our best to implement it at the soonest possible time, at the quickest possible, at the quickest possible pace.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chairman, for that very supportive answer. Thank you very much. Now, what I'm saying also, Mr. Chairman, is in our Constitution, we cannot have a double appropriation because what has been appropriated in 2020, we cannot move it and have it transferred to the appropriation of 2021. That is why we are saying, Mr. Chairman, that if we move the 135 billion, the 50%, if you're not going to be paid and everything, all the FLRs to all districts within a month's time, the problem is it will be placed into it will be unconstitutional because we cannot reappropriate. It becomes double appropriation. There can be no such thing that there can be a double appropriation. And that is why we urge the Secretary to help us convince the DBM, because the DBMs, although I will ask them now, the DBM, that there should be no more FLRs in the coming years. It has never been done when I was congressman from 2007 to 2016, 9 years. Now when I come back, there's an FLR. So that is what is confusing to all of us. And so therefore it gives false hopes because after all, some of the FLRs are not really funded in full and maybe given to the next year. What you appropriate now should be it. There's now there should be no other FLRs or for later release. No such thing in the Constitution, Mr. Chairman. So I would like to ask, because we have a very supportive secretary, we'd like to ask the DBM now of whether they are going to release all the SAROs for the do all the FLRs of all districts in our country in one month's time. Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary, can you answer that question?
It's for the DBM now, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. DBM, can you please reply? DBM?
Hello, Mr. Chair. Good
Yes.
afternoon.
Can you reply to that
Actually-
question?
Actually, that is a policy decision that only that can be answered by my superiors, sir. So I will inform the secretary regarding your request, and it will be his decision, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you very much. You have no fault here. But, Mr. Chairman, I insist on the presence of the DBM Secretary, my good friend Wendell Avisado. It cannot be answered now. When will be the time in the plenary? That should not be the case, Mr. Chairman. We have to have the commitment because the House leadership said that the DBM has already approved to release all of the FLRs for 2020 so that we go to 2021 and these FLRs in 2021 will not be there anymore because they will be paid this year, and the FLR amounts which are in our budget in the districts should now be new projects to be identified by all of us within this coming weeks, Mr. Chairman. So we know why Secretary Avisado is absent in a very important, the public works budget is what is the most important to us because it is pump priming. It is for the development of our districts. So we know why Wendell Avisado could not be present, Mr. Chairman. Otherwise, I will ask for the deferment of this budget because the DBM is not here. They should be here, Mr. Chairman.
DBM, can you reply why the DBM Secretary is not around?
Secretary Avisado is now in a prior the engagement, so he cannot be around. I'm sure he will make himself available when the time comes. Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chair, I'd just like to express Mr. Chair, I'd like to express my support for the committee. I will personally speak with Sec Wendell about this, as I share the sentiment. Kong Rufus is one of the most, I've known him for a long time, and he's one of the most, the sharpest legal minds in Congress. And up to now, I learned a lot from him. So I will be assisting the Congress in this issue. And I'll really do my best to see how we can resolve it at the soonest possible time. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
With that, Mr. Chairman, with that manifestation, I always, support Secretary Villar, and we hope he will be able to talk to Secretary Abisado. It's very important. All congressmen are really, waiting that this could be released, because the projects there, we have informed our people, and they're not forthcoming. And this is not good for the district. So with that, I thank the Secretary for that. Now, Mr. Chairman, I would just like to therefore now ask that does the Secretary believe that we should therefore not have any more FLRs in 2021 for being violative of the Constitution? What you were Congressman, we were congressmen together during your term here, and there was no FLR at the time. What is in the budget approved is really implemented by the public works at the time, so we had no problem. Would you agree that instead of FLRs, because you're going to release the FLRs for 2020, there will be no need, therefore, to have the 2021 FLRs, and that amount, those there, could be put into use for the recommendation of 62 of us congressmen whose budget in 2019, and you very well know our predicament, Mr. Secretary, you've been helping us, that somehow they will be restored through 2021. 2020 is, it's already there. But 2021 is, instead of the FLRs, it should be for the 62 districts of our country, which, like me, lost 2.2 billion because of highway robbery committed by some leadership of this Congress during that time. So may we know, Mr. Secretary, if that could be, there should be no more FLRs, nothing. It should all be what is approved by the Congress is the budget and will be implemented by all agencies. May we know your comment on that, Mr. Chairman?
I believe Congressman, we should be working together so it doesn't happen again. It's not the delay of funds. It's not a situation that we like or that anyone else likes. So we'll be working with the DBM to make sure that ideally the funds should be appropriated as early in the year as possible. It should be obligated. That's our goal, and we will be working with DBM. And I think, to be fair, the DBM, I think they'll share in that goal. And I really believe that we can work together with Congress and DBM and us to make sure that the funds are immediately, once they're there, they're immediately obligated. And everyone, there's no reason why we can't all be on the same page in this endeavor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Secretary. My last question is not more of a question, but a thank you. I would like to thank the Secretary for appropriating for 2021 for the appropriation of Dpwh, the continuation, the extension of the CDO Coastal Bypass Road. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. You have given almost 400 million from the Puerto to Gusa, and it has appeared in your Facebook and the Dpwh, and everybody in Cagayan are excited for this. Thank you for that. And the last thank you is the 50 million you gave from the Mbuc for the lighting of our existing coastal bypass road, because it is a cause now of so many accidents, because there was at the time, before your time, there was really no guidelines yet on Mbuc. Now you have it, and we thank you. And so we thank you for the electric lighting of coastal bypass road, 50 million, and the 400 million for the Puerto to Gusa extension of our coastal road. Thank you. Again, the Oro will always remember Secretary Mark Villar, and will always be grateful to our good secretary for your outstanding performance as our Secretary of the Dpwh. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for the time, and thank you, Secretary Villar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and it's also a testimony to your progressive leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Next to interpolate from the majority, Congresswoman Sienna Tan. Congresswoman Sienna Tan. Congresswoman Sienna Tan, if you are in the Zoom, parang wala yata. We will now proceed to the next interpellator, Congressman Hector Sanchez.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, proceed, please.
Can you hear me? Yes, good afternoon, Mr. Secretary, and to all the family of DPWH. Under CUA audit, calendar year 2018, you have DPWH have a savings in your projects of around 118.4 billion due to conflict with LGUs and design were not completed. My question is, how much is the total amount of projects not implemented also in 2019 with the same reason, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chairman?
How many part of projects were not implemented?
Amount, sir, amount.
Amount? Can I confirm the ask for finance? What is our savings for that? Ang tanong niyo po kung magkano yung savings in 2019?
Yes, you are right, Mr.
Can I ask from our finance director Palafox what our savings was for 2019?
Palafox, you're recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the savings and variances submitted to DBM for the 2019 is 13.68 billion.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So with that amount of 13.68 billion plus the 2018, which is 118.4 billion, as per record of CUA audit.
Sige. Mute pala.
Mr. Chairman, we are discussing about FLRs for 2020 and 2021. Since this savings, may I suggest, Mr. Chairman, to be retained to the Department of DPWH, because well, under Section 22, these were already approved by the Congress, and this is a law. Mr. Chairman, I would like to put it on records to this committee of this request. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Secretary, can you? Okay. Thank you, Congressman Sanchez.
I have my next concern, Mr. Chairman.
Proceed, yeah, please. Last question, probably.
Yeah, Mr. Secretary, Karamuran town proper of my province, that is my birthplace. And since then, we have a big problem on our seawalls, which during typhoon, storm surge are very high, and it's very unsafe to our constituents. May I request, Mr. Secretary, to even give us or prioritize this for this year, 50 million for a multi-year project, Mr. Secretary?
Mr. Chairman, can we request for a formal letter, and we will do our best. I think, and I can meet with Congressman also to discuss his parochial concerns if he'd like.
Yes, thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, and I would like to manifest that the good secretary, again, to congratulate you and to commend your a very, very good performance. It's an excellent performance. And for me, Sa nakikita ko po sa dami-daming naging DPWH secretary, alam nyo noong araw, ang problema yung mga hukay dyan sa kalye. Now, nawala po lahat yun. Luzon, Visayas, Mindanao. That's why we are looking forward of your success. A very young secretary, maybe you'll be a very good leader in the future. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, and thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Next, to interpolate from the majority, Congressman Mayo Almario.
Thank you, Chairman, Secretary. Let me go direct to the point, no? The budget process for the department and for all other departments as well is that your department, the District Engineering Office, prepares their annual investment program. And then that AIP is endorsed to the region for consideration of the RDC. Tama ho ba?
Yes, yes.
Okay. From the RDC, it goes to the OSEC of DPWH. The planning ng DPWH. But when DPWH receives the budget ceiling from DBM, it is now the central office who puts a limit in every AIP of the DEO, of the District Engineering Office. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, now, let me cite figures, for example, for discussion para mas klaro po. Kunyari, ang sinabit ng DEO is 5 billion, screened and endorsed by RDC. But then, natanggap ng OSEC, ng DP, na ito lang ang ceiling niya, sabi ng DBM, then OSEC will now approve a small part of the 5 billion submitted and screened by the RDC. Kunyari, kung 5 billion ang total, ang ma-approve doon, mga 2 billion na lang. Is that correct po?
Possible, yes.
Yes.
Yes, it's a fair
question. Here's my question. Who chooses which projects in the AIP as endorsed by RDC will be included within the ceiling set by DBM?
Well, of course, that function is delegated mostly to the planning department. But that being said, that's not the only. There are priorities that emanate from the executive that don't necessarily, that are also, they can be presidential priorities, commitments. So it doesn't necessarily. There are certain projects that if they are deemed as priority projects. Then it can, those are also given priority.
Yes, okay. That should be in the formula SEC, no? Pero what I am trying to say is that when there is already a definitive ceiling, part of that must be given back to the DEO to choose their top priorities from the list of projects they included in their AIP. Because they know better the condition in the district than the central office.
Yes, yes, as much as possible. Yes, again, this is there are national priorities that are outlined, that national goals, national projects that we also take into account. So, but that's why we're here in Congress, is so we can hear what the suggestions are. If there are any concerns with each district, kami naman po, willing naman kami makipag-usap para mas mabigyan ng serbisyo ang ating mga distrito. So, again, this was our recommendation. It's not necessarily all. There are also some national priorities that emanate from other sources, but we are here to address your concerns.
Yes, because I was looking at the items in the AIP of my engineering district, and that one contained in your addendum. There are some ongoing projects which cannot be continued for simply because it's not funded for next year.
Mr. Chair, I can definitely I can discuss this with you. I give this service to all districts that I realize that there's no process, wala namang perfect po na process, and I'm open to a discussion with regards to the details of your particular district so that we can improve. There are certain items na gusto nyo pong ituloy na hindi na pondohan. Open naman kami, pwede naman pag-usapan.
Thank you very much for that, Sec. No, I hope what Kong Rufus said earlier about FLRs will not happen, because if we change again the listing as what happened in 2020, it went to FLR. Now, much about that. Let's talk about FLR. So the FLRs are now the sparrows for the FLRs are now trickling in, and some are already started, but most will be started in October yet.
Please
Some
wind
were
up your
started
question,
in September.
Kong Almario. You have
That's
consumed
3 months away from
3
the
minutes.
deadline of December 31, 2020. How do you go about that? There are projects which require 240 days to finish, but you have 90 days coming in.
Well, the life of the fund does not lapse. We have a 1-year obligation period to obligate, but that's not to disperse. We have a 2-year disbursement period. So even if the 1 year lapses, we still have time to implement the projects.
Okay. Now, last sec, yung MICA, who approves the MICA? Is it Dpwh alone or DP with DBM?
We propose it, but the DBM approves the MICA.
Have you proposed to DBM?
Yes. We regularly, that's a part of our, there are many projects. We encourage the use
That
of
will be
MICA
the last
to
question,
Kong. To make the, of course, the cash disbursements more efficient. So that's one of the mechanisms we use to be more efficient, and it allows us to bid out multi-year projects in one contract.
Yeah, because it was mentioned earlier, and your reply was the same contractor will be handling the tail end of that project na nasa 2021. Pero ang balita ko, wala parang guidelines from the head office because, as you said, DBM has to act on it. Ganun ba?
I believe they're acting on it. They're doing the SAROS and the MICA that will come. We will continue to help you follow up, but I understand that I will speak with Sec Wendell again and express the concerns. And ako naman po, gusto ko rin na mailabas na po yung mga funds para at least makapagsimula na.
Okay, thank you so much, Sec. Mr. Chairman, just an input, no? We're focusing on the FLRs sa DPWH, pero meron din sa DA. And while Secretary Villar, in behalf of his department, has been requesting DBM to release, that's not the same case for the Department of Agriculture. So dapat medyo tignan din natin ang mga unreleased funds in the Department of Agriculture. That's all, Mr. Chairman. Secretary Mark, thank you.
Thank you, Kong Almario. Next to interpolate is Congresswoman Teresa Colliantes. Sino? Gloricita? Yes, sir. Ako na po, sir. Nilagyan na niya na. Wala pa si Colliantes. Congresswoman Teresa Colliantes, if you are in the Zoom. Last call, Congresswoman Teresa Colliantes. If not, then we'll proceed to the next interpellator, Congressman Alan Ecleo. Congressman Alan Ecleo. Okay.
Mr. Chairman, pwedeng pahabol kay Secretary Mark.
Next is Congressman Gorisita. Congressman Gorisita. Are you in the Zoom?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And good afternoon, Secretary Mark and the whole Dpwh family and my fellow colleagues. I would like to ask Secretary Mark kung what's the status of the Iloilo-Panay Guimaras Bridge, because that will traverse, it will pass my district if ever would be realized, and malaking tulong to sa mga kababayan natin at sa mga tao dito sa Iloilo City and of course Iloilo Province sa SecMart.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. Can I ask USEC Undersecretary Emil Sadain to brief the Congressman the
Mr.
latest
Chair,
updates of the
Mr. Chair, Your Honor,
Panay Guimaras Negros?
updates for the Panay Guimaras Negros Island. There's actually a shift on financing from the China Infrastructure Development Cooperation Agency into a Korean Exim Bank. So right now, Mr. Chair, the Korean Exim Bank manifested to fund this project, but subject, however, to the revisit of the feasibility studies done in the past by the China study team. So this is somehow to address more expansions in terms of ridership and connectivity from island to island. So, Mr. Chair, we are actually waiting for the team from the Korean Exim Bank, which will be coming within this year, as they have related to us. And eventually, we'll be also interpolating with them as to the timelines and the prioritizations, because we have learned that the projects, because of its enormity in terms of cost, would come out in two phases. Yun po kung the first phase will be from Iloilo to Guimaras, and the second phase will be from Guimaras to Negros Island. So far, that's the update, Mr. Chair, that we had gotten from the Korean Exim Bank.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, USEC Emil, and of course to Secretary Mark, our very hardworking Secretary of Dpwh. Thank you sa lahat ng tulong mo dito sa akin distrito, SecMark. That's all, Mr. Chair, and magandang hapon sa lahat.
Thank you. That is the last interpellator.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
In relation to the question of Congressman Curaseta, can I have my manifestation?
Yes.
Yes. With
Please
that,
proceed.
Mr. Chair, I would like to manifest to the Department of for Dpwh to prioritize the said project, because as what we said, that will help boost the economy not only of the Iloilo City, Guimaras Province, or the Panay Island as well. Thank you so much, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chair, Kong Poliantes here.
Yes, Kong, we'll hear you loud and clear. Please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon to our colleagues, Secretary Villar and the Dpwh family. The 3rd District of Batangas is composed of 2 cities and 10 municipalities, including the Taal Volcano Island itself. The Taal Volcano eruption last January 12 brought much destruction to 5 municipalities in my district in terms of damages to school buildings, barangay halls, gymnasiums, roads, homes, businesses, and livelihood. This representation, Mr. Chair, would like to inquire from the good secretary on what happened to the Taal eruption rehabilitation plan. Please note that the President mentioned that 30 billion will be allocated for the rehabilitation of Taal. Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary, we need evacuation centers in each municipality. Repair of buildings that were damaged. This eruption, Mr. Chair, emphasized the need for new roads, especially in times of disasters, as the 3rd District of Batangas is always in imminent danger. Mr. Chair, we have to repair the existing roads, canals, drainage that were damaged in my district. We have to widen the national roads also, and we must complete the Taal Lake Circumferential Road. Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary, I would like to appeal that the proposed budget submitted by the 3rd Engineering Office be considered, because included in this list are the projects distracted by the Taal Volcano eruption. Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary, I hope you hear my appeal. That would be all, and to all of you, good afternoon.
Yes, Mr. Chair. As per our last discussion, I've already asked the operations to submit a list of the project. In fact, it's with me, the list of the necessary repairs. We do have a fund for this kind of calamities, and we will expedite the the needs of those who are affected by Taal. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for your concern. Rest assured, I will personally be on top of this.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. May I request, Mr. Secretary, that your lead person get in touch with my office so that we can see the list and discuss this, Mr. Chair?
Can the Secretary furnish copies as requested?
Oh, sorry. Sorry, nakamute pala ako. Yes, I will immediately coordinate. Actually, even personally, Congresswoman, I have the list with me, so I know the projects. I will work on this because immediately, and I will ask our Undersecretary for Luzon to immediately coordinate the request for the needs of those who are affected by that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Maraming salamat, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary. Mabuhay po kayo.
Thank you.
Chair,
The next, the last to interpolate.
Chairman, Congressman Chungalaw here, can I be listed to interpolate at least even 1 minute only?
Yes, after Congresswoman Gloria Labad-Labad, Kong Chungalaw. So the next to interpolate is Congresswoman Gloria Labad-Labad.
RD, yes. RD, yes, oo.
Hi, good afternoon po. Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Good afternoon po,
okay.
Mr. Secretary.
Please proceed,
To the
yes.
whole Dpwh family. I just have one concern po with regards to my district. Actually, just a simple one. I just want to have some modification sa road concreting ko po sa district. So I already discussed this one, Mr. Secretary, with your staff, kay Engineer Paulo Cortez. So, ano lang po, hinihiling ko lang po yung inyong tulong po para po magawa po yung aking konting modification po dun sa project na hinihingi ko po. That's all, Mr. Chair, Mr. Secretary. Maraming salamat po for all the help po sa district. And God bless you po.
Thank you, Kong. Next to interpolate, Congressman Chungalaw.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Secretary. Hindi sana ako magtatanong dito kasi I have only a few concerns which I took up with you previously. Pero I just wanted 1 minute tungkol dyan sa Mbuc kasi sa Cordillera Regional Administrative Region, we cannot explain na yung Mbuc concentrated sa isang province at saka 15 million lang nabigay sa Abra at saka Apayao and the rest are zero. Reiterate ko lang please, Secretary, kahit konti lang naman sa ibang probinsya sa Cordillera Administrative Region.
Yes, sir. We will, as per our discussion, I will assist you in helping the safety having more, safety.
Yes,
safety
Secretary.
Infrastructure in your area.
Kasi we have a new director, okay naman. Baka ipasyal ko pa sa District 2 for my district to see the terraces and the rest of the project that we needed. We cannot blame him on that. It was not during his time. Pero yun lang, Secretary, at least para naman ma-explain namin na nabigyan na lahat ng Cordillera ng kahit tagkukunti, hindi lang makakonsentrate sa isa. Parang that has been always our complaint in the Cordillera Administrative Region na kung the national offices treat the car, mukhang Baguio-Benguet lang ang alam nila. Nakakalimutan nila na there are 6 provinces also. Yun lang, Secretary. Thank you very much, Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Thank you. Meeting suspended.
Resume. Briefing is resume.
Meeting resume.
Manifestation. Congressman.
I would like to call Vice Chairman Paul Dasa for a very short manifestation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm compelled, first, to thank the good secretary because we had problems in our area and many have been solved. So I thank the good secretary, Yusek Bernardo, and Director Bueno. But I'm also compelled, Mr. Chair, and in fact, I must state for the record that this particular problem was before the 18th Congress and dagdag po sa problema ni Speaker, na inherit niya yung problema which was mentioned by Kong Rufus Rodriguez. In 2019, there were 63 districts that were severely affected by drastic reduction of the budget. Many of the members went to see personally Secretary Villar, and they have all told me that there was some assurance that the department will try to help. So I just wanted some assurance from the secretary that if those 2019 appeals weren't incorporated in the 2021 budget, if maybe in 2022 that could be considered by the department, by the good secretary, Mr. Chair. That's all, Mr. Chair.
Comment, Mr. Honorable Secretary.
Mr. Chair, we really will do our best with what resources we are given. We're really trying our best to be. We'll always be as fair as we possibly can, and we'll continue to listen to the concerns. So, you know, if there with what budget we have now, if there are any improvements that we can still do, I'm here. I'm available to listen.
Thank you, Mr.
Yeah, just for you. Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Congressman Dalipi.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I would just want to thank the good Secretary Mark Villar, for putting in his the list of projects for Region 9, particularly in the 2nd Congressional District of Zamboanga. Thank you very much. Maraming salamat po, Mr. Secretary. And also thank you also to Yusek Emil Sadain, yung mga UPMO projects. Alam to ni Yusek Yabut, particularly yung Kuruan to Sibuko, PR12 project. Thank you rin po dun sa Zamboanga East, proposed Zamboanga East Diversion Road Project, UPMO rin. And also thank you to my very good friend, Yusek Dimas Sugilon. Nakakalimutan tayo minsan ni Yusek Dimas. Thank you very much. And also, thank you very much. A lot of thanks also to Yusek, Cathy Cabral. Ma'am, we have, together with Secretary Mark Villar, we started projects in the 2nd Congressional District last 17 Congress, and I hope we can finish the 2 diversion roads, bypass roads, in the 18th Congress with the leadership of Secretary Mark Villar, and also finish also the widening of AH-26. I have more than 100 kilometers of national projects in the district. Also, thank you, Secretary Mark and the whole DPWH family. With that, Mr. Chairman.
I move.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Congressman,
please,
Vice Chairman Ted.
short manifestation, please. Mr. Chair.
Sino yun?
Congressman Tejada.
Congressman Tejada for a short manifestation. Yes, please proceed.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair, and my friends, Ted and Manix, and of course, and to everyone, but most especially, thank you very much, Secretary Mark, for building road to peace in Mindanao. That is in our peace effort, you have contributed a lot by building roads to peace, Mr. Secretary Mark, and of course, to our Regional Director, Basir Ibrahim, and to all members of the DPWH family. Thank you very much. You made a great role in development and peace in Mindanao, Secretary Mark. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, Kong Harisco.
it is my distinct honor to congratulate the DPWH family, especially Secretary Mark Villar, Yusek Emil Sadain, Undersecretary Cathy Cabral, Undersecretary Paing Yabot, Undersecretary Dimas Sugilon, my long-lost relative from Aklan, Undersecretary Edward Ramos, our unsung heroes during the time of COVID, Mr. Chairman, they never let us down and gave confidence in the countryside. That is why it is my distinct honor, Mr. Chairman, to call for the termination of the
I
budget
second, Mr.
briefing
Chair.
by Dpwh. Thank you.
80 seconds.
Mr. Chairman.
Yusek Bernardo pa pala.
This briefing
Sorry.
this Dpwh briefing is terminated.
Ayan,